with a laptop charger.
Splinter Cell is back in action, and God of War on PC.
Laptop charger. We'll leave it in.
Hello and welcome to Shenanigans During Intro. I'm your host.
Always.
No, welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, is
Saw Bridges, bringing you lucky episode 234, and alongside me is
Chris Figgs. Hey,
look, we got it down pretty well.
I love that Chris always has an urgency.
Chris Figgs.
I thought about it before the show. I was like, oh yeah, I have to say my name today. Kept it in mind.
Okay, Chris, you've got it. If this is your first time listening to the show, we are, of course, a PlayStation podcast, but we're more really a gaming podcast that just kind of looks at everything from the focal point of us all being PlayStation fans. We, of course, talk about Nintendo and Xbox as needed and give our thoughts honestly about what they're doing, positive or negative. Occasionally, sometimes it ends up being more PlayStation focused, but we'll get into that in a little while. We start the show off the time-honored tradition right way of getting an update on what we've all been playing or not playing and what we've been up to. So, Chris, I'm going to lob back to you for this one. What you been playing this week, man?
Death Stranding.
I'm not going to lie. Looking at your things of how frustrated you were about getting the platinum,
yeah,
I thought, is he going to quit? Is this man going to not get the platinum? So what are you doing? What trophies are you working toward?
Right now I'm doing the 20 Legends of Legends premium deliveries. You have to get one in each category, and I'm almost there. I have my little spreadsheet with all of it listed out. The one I'm having trouble with is it's like Homo Farber or something like that, where you have to build all the construction. And I'm at 12 of 13, and I've built everything twice. So I don't know what I'm missing. And it's really frustrating.
Ooh. Well, there's got to be a quest guide, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've followed, because I have my notebook with all the stuff written down so I can just cross it off. And I've crossed everything off twice. So now I'm very confused. So I'm just hoping that
it's not a glitch trophy.
Yeah. Well, people have the platinum. So it's just something I'm doing wrong.
Well, what I kind of mean there is that I have trophies that are not widespread glitched, but they glitched on me, and the only answer is for me to just go and do it again. Perfect example of that is perfect example of that is Infamous 2.
Yeah,
I beat that game on hard. Played the entire game on hard. The trophy did not pop.
Ugh.
I looked into it, I found 3 other cases of people having issues with it, and the solution they came up with is that you just have to play the game on hard again. And at that point, I was like, you kiss my ass. I just played this game 2 times already.
Yeah.
So I just was like, whatever, I'm done. I've debated going back, but yeah.
Do it. But yeah, it's been mostly Death Stranding. I put a little bit of Far Cry 6 and some Stardew Valley.
So looking at Far Cry 6, I mean, if you had to say a little bit more since when we last recorded, if you had to give it a number of hours.
12, probably.
That's more than I expected. So Has it changed your opinion at all?
No, it's still Far Cry.
So yeah, I said I was going to give it a try. This entire week, when I was playing games, I was just, okay, I'm playing Alan Wake because Alan Wake is really good.
Yeah,
and I finally beat Alan Wake, and I'll say that my opinion on that game, and I said it to the Discord with you and Blake already, of the 360 exclusives I've played, which there are a large number of omissions from, but of the 360 exclusives I've played, it is definitely the best.
Yeah, I think it's far and away the best.
Yeah, to me, I think it's and I mean best in terms of a game that would have really moved the needle for me on 360. I don't mean best across the board, even though I still think that there's a lot of truth to that. Mechanics are interesting, even if they've aged a little roughly, but, as par for the course with a remaster. But the writing is just so focused and interesting, and it feels like a mini series, like I said. And I think the pacing, for the most part, is really good. The only thing where I really think the game somewhat fails, at least to me, is this idea that it wants to be an open world game, but it doesn't really drive me to ever break my stride of wanting to complete the story, to ever go explore the other areas. And it's weird because, of course, we complain in Spider-Man that we don't want to be taken away to where we can't go do the next thing immediately. But at the same time, if you're going to make a game like that, which Alan Wake is, you don't have to explore at all. You can go exactly to the goal, to where you need to be. But if you're going to make an open world, you should at least try and make it interesting enough for me that it doesn't take me driving through being like, oh, I guess I could have gone and done that, but I'm just not interested. In one hand, it tells you how interesting I think the main story is because I wanted to continue to see it. But it makes me wonder kind of on the other side of things, what do they need or what could they have done with the limitations of 360 and that game pushing those limits already to have really worked on it. I think there's probably some kind of game design, but it would have taken away from how structured and focused the narrative felt.
Yeah.
So
I can see that.
Can't have your cake and eat it too. I guess it just feels like maybe it would have been better if that game was just strictly linear. But
I can see that, absolutely.
It's pretty linear to begin with, to be dead honest. It's just a linear style game set in an open world. So, but yeah, that's good. I haven't played Far Cry 6. Is where I was really going with that. I thought I was going to, and every single time that I had the opportunity, no joke, I was like, I'm just going to watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Instead. I sat there before I lob it off to you, Saul, since I'm already kind of covering what I played. I downloaded Prey. I told y'all. I started playing it. I'm gonna tell you, Prey feels like dog trash after coming off of Deathloop and all these other games that are running at 60 frames per second. Plus, it's got an input lag that I don't remember, but it's been so long since I played it originally and didn't beat it anyway that I don't remember it. But looking into it, apparently that was a common problem for consoles. But it sucks to me, and I get it. There's two frustrations I have here. One is that because Bethesda has been bought out by Xbox, they are very unlikely, just like we saw with Hellblade and Ninja Theory, to want to come back and update these games to run better on PS5, because where's the motivation? And secondarily, that PS5 doesn't have FPS boost. Because I really wish that on PlayStation, this game could run 60 frames per second. And technically speaking, there's no reason that it can't. It's just there's no ground support for that feature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to a question. I don't know enough about it. I don't know if any of you have messed with it enough or looked into it. And one of our listeners can probably tell me. I could look it up too, though. I was thinking, what is FPS boost? Is it something that Xbox is really kind of calling a console level feature, but in the long run, it's really just them going back to a handful of games themselves and updating them? Because it kind of reminds me of enhanced backwards compatibility, where they were like, oh, it's just part of the feature. I'm like, of the system. I'm like, not really, because every one of these games is you going in and updating the game and your system to support the specific game. So is it really a a hardware level feature, or is it just a thing where you're going through and hand picking a couple of games to put time and effort into so that you have a bigger draw? I don't know. I'm unsure of how it works.
From what I gathered, it's like a system level thing that they can enable. But I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing across the board. It's just more of the way it's marketed leads me to think that it should work for every game, but clearly that's not the case. Just like that wasn't the case with enhanced backwards compatibility, right? Not every 1X game ran with an increased resolution. Only a handful did. And it was like Microsoft had to do something. So it's just interesting. But I do wish that was one of them, because Prey on Xbox Series S and X runs at 60 frames per second. And it also fixes loading problems where that game takes well over a minute to load on PS4. PS5 may not, but yeah, consistent. And you have to travel between areas constantly, and every single time this minute loads.
God, I can't believe we dealt with that for so long.
Right, us console plebeians finally getting into the into the space of SSDs. Yeah, between that and the input lag is apparently also gone on the Xbox version. So it's just, I'm over here like I really would like to work towards platinum on Prey if I fall in love, but I kind of just think I want to play it on PC or Xbox at this point.
I think it's a rare platinum, so you could always have that going for you.
But it just doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't.
I messed up, guys.
You're talking to the guy who just bought Dark Void on PS3, so I don't really... It doesn't matter to me.
It took all the wind out of my sails to want to play Dishonored 2 again on PlayStation 4 or on PS5. Because I was like, I can work towards that platinum, but it's going to run at 30 frames per second too.
Dishonored 1 wasn't terrible when I played it. I just didn't like it, so I stopped.
Dishonored 1, the remaster, did it not include 60 frames per second support?
Maybe it did. I'm not 100%
So I know you
sure.
played it. It may not have. It may have just moved it up to 1080p.
I played it fairly recently, and I actually don't remember. Dishonored is one of those games that, like, since I played before I cared about frame rate, that I didn't pay attention to. So I guess I paid attention to it then.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's locked at 30 on PS5.
Okay. I was like, I know it doesn't have any enhancements from PS5 to PS4.
Yeah. Both of those games had PS4 Pro support, and I was hoping that meant that they had performance modes that just unlocked the frame rate, because that would get you where I needed to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sadly, that's not in the cards. Saul, what's been playing though, man?
I have been still playing on Metal Gear Solid 5.
Okay.
And I've been kind of chipping away at that. This time, though, I've actually been playing all the side quests as I come across them. And that's been pretty fun. But
I didn't play any of those. Is it like, are they like in depth? Or are they kind of just more like short stories set within the world?
Well, okay, so some of them are more so that you can get better people for your base, which increases production.
Sure.
So that game, it does have like a base simulator aspect to it. Of you building up mother base, there's a mechanic that you have that you can pretty much parachute off soldiers that you incapacitate. And as you do that, your soldiers, they have different stats and different levels for each one. And you can turn, that light off. But you can turn them into mother base, and then every platform you have, like R&D and Intel, they can be leveled up. And as they level up, you can produce more items. And so, you end up being able to produce more items earlier by doing side quests, because some of them have some really high ranking members that you can pretty much kidnap. And some of them are really annoying, like gun ranges on mother base. And those things, I'm not doing those, because you have to hit 35 targets and you have to find them in like 4 minutes, I think, or 3 minutes. And it's not fun.
I remember those. Those were rough.
Sometimes those kind of things in games are fun, and then sometimes I'm like, you're pushing too hard. Like I remember when Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the original one, first came out, that I did get really into like the trying to maximize my speed through the training course. And then Titanfall did it, and it was tied to a trophy. And I tried and tried and tried, and I finally just gave up. I was like, I don't even care.
It's so hard, that trophy.
Like I love that game, but now I'm done. I had one friend who did it like 120 times and finally got it. And I was like, it's not happening here, buddy. Not happening. I got like 35 to 40 deep and was like, I'm defeated. Please move on.
There's a funny story about that where I saw these guys do it. Or I think it was Colin and Chris Reagan on their show, and Colin can't do it. Their whole Let's Play is like them trying to do it, and I think the Let's Play is like 4 minutes long because Chris just gets it done on the first try and then they just move on. But Colin just can't handle it. It's very funny. It's so hard.
And I've tried every little different way, right? Like you're sitting there trying to like do calculus of like I could slide here, shave off 1.2 seconds, throw this grenade.
You got to grenade yourself across basically, and I'm not good at that.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, and I'm not bad at first person shooters, so that always makes me feel like I'm bad at first person shooters. But they're just asking for
too much
realistic things, or unrealistic things for the average player. But at the same time, it does make a cool platinum, because like if you see somebody, they're like, I got Titanfall platinum, you're like, damn, mad respect.
It was funny because even in universe, like my main in Apex is Octane, and the whole story of him and his metal legs is that he blew off his legs with a grenade trying to run the gauntlet for the fastest time.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Oh, man. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get into the news. But before we do that, remember that you can find us on social media platforms over on Twitter at Triangle SQRD. You can find us. And if you do that, you can be part of the community stake, which we get into later in the show, where we have you guys kind of reach out and give us your thoughts on a subject that we talked about in the previous week. You can, of course, just reach out to us and talk to us about any of the things we talk on the show. You can join the Discord that's linked in the description below of both the video and the podcast, which brings us to the point that you can watch this in video format if you prefer to do so over on YouTube. If you do, like the video, subscribe, lets you know when these are hitting, and of course, share them with your friends, anybody you think might like it. As well as on podcast services, you can subscribe so that you see when these episodes go live, as well as give us reviews. Many, many, many of you have given us reviews, and we thank you. It is very nice to be basically right under a 5-star. I think we're like a 4.9 or something on iTunes. That's awesome. But if you can't review us on your podcast service, a subscription is at least a something that you can do to kind of help support us, and of course share the show with your friends. But moving along here, first thing on the news, and I gotta quickly step aside and say, Chris, thanks for doing the news, buddy.
You're welcome.
I'm half dead today because I drove in the middle of the night myself. So Chris very clutchly last night agreed to help do the news this week. So I appreciate it. First thing on the news, after the allegations of impropriety rocked Activision Blizzard, they've announced the renaming of Jesse McCree, which is an Overwatch character, to Cole Cassidy. Seems like a valuable move to make up for all that happened. I'm sure that women at Activision feel much safer. I like that there's obviously Chris's sense of comedy in here, and my delivery is not at all the way that he would deliver this. So letting you know that. Which brings us to the interesting thing of what we are not the first people to do. It's just something that's interesting. There was a porn star named Cassidy Cole. And that just seems to put a bow on this real nicely, you know?
Yeah, they did so much research.
My only thing, because here's the thing, I just think it's funny in terms of a happenstance. But the question is it happenstance, or is this another calculated effort of someone in the position being like, I wasn't ousted just yet. I'm going to make my final move.
They're going to have to rename him again.
We'll see if this gets discovered. So that's interesting, but there we are. Next thing up in the news, Sony has announced a new state of play for October 27th. This state of play will be covering third-party games. It'll be a showcase for those. It's very short, right around 20 minutes is what they're saying. And Chris says here to avoid the inevitable overhype and angry reactions. That's always a good thing, though, like we were talking about, where if Sony could set expectations early on, it's better. So if you just say it's going to be all third-party stuff and it's going to be 20 minutes, you don't have that thing where someone's like, they're going to show Kingdom Hearts 5.72 and all these different things, which I guess arguably they could, right? It's a third-party game. But let's, set those expectations correctly. But Chris, what are you hoping to see from this, man? If you're thinking third-party, what are you thinking you're actually going to see?
All I care to see is Hogwarts. That's all I want to see.
Do you think we'll see it? I mean, it got delayed into 2022, right? That was it?
Yeah.
So it's about time we see it again.
Yeah, I think it'll be there.
Okay. Do you think there's any chance that we actually see gameplay from either Gotham Knights or the Suicide Squad, or do you think that the moment to do that would have actually been Fandom?
I think we'll see it from Gotham Knights, but I don't think we'll see it from Suicide Squad. I'm waiting for that 2023 Suicide Squad delay.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, they're different teams, so I guess it doesn't really matter. They're very different games in terms of style and tone. I wonder how close they are, like we talked about, from a gameplay level, and if they would actually cannibalize each other at all. But
I mean, I'm not sure. If the rumor is Suicide Squad is a live service game, I don't necessarily know that Gotham Knights will cannibalize it. I think it'll cannibalize itself at that point.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, let's see. Next thing up, Apex Legends Season 11 has been announced. It's called Escape and brings with it a new map, a classic Titanfall weapon, the CAR SMG, okay, CAR SMG, I guess, if nothing else, and a new hero in Ash. A gameplay trailer is forthcoming on October 25th. So, Chris, not only are you excited about this, you're very excited about this to the point that you gave it a 100. as we know about 100, that's when it's top. So what you got there? What are you thinking?
No, I'm excited. The last season wasn't that great, so I'm hoping the new map and stuff will elevate it. I'm worried about some stuff. They have these like PvE like mobs that supposedly you can trigger. And that's either going to end my time with Apex Legends or it's going to be really fun. So we're going to find out. But I really like Ash.
During the middle of a match, there's something that can just activate non-playable characters to come out that you have to deal with?
Supposedly there's like mobs or like nests. And if you disturb the nests, then you have to fight them. And I would imagine they give like good rewards. But we haven't seen the actual gameplay yet, so that's all coming off leaks. But in the trailer, they literally walk up to like this bridge, and then all these spiders start coming out, and they have to shoot the spiders. And I'm like, if I'm trying to like rat at the end of a game, and I get attacked by spiders, I will delete the game immediately.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking. Is that ideal wise of being able to introduce a way for you to reward players in the game with gear that would be better for them to use against other players by having some weird in-between thing like that. It sounds cool, like as an immediate thought for me, because I don't spend a lot of time in those worlds. But then hearing you, it's like as you were talking, I was like, oh, I guess like you're trying to rally towards the very end. It's you and two other people, and you happen to get caught by spiders. You're distracted trying to deal with them so you don't die, and the other people just cap you.
Exactly, and Apex has a third party problem because the sound for the bullets are so loud. So if I have to fight a bunch of spiders or prowlers or whatever, and then people come in third party because of that, that's not happening for me. I'm good.
So what do you mean by third party?
So like if you're in the middle of a fight, so like in Apex, a lot of the ways you'll fight is you'll hear, okay, there's two teams fighting like over there at Repulsor or whatever. So then we go to Repulsor and win that, basically just take the fight.
I get what you're saying. Because the guns are so loud, you can hear from far enough away, and then you can come in and get the drop on people who are still currently in action.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, I got you. I never heard it called that. So, which I mean, I've also never heard anybody explain it that way, but yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Interesting idea. Well, Saul says he's potentially interested. The thing is, I don't think I have Apex downloaded anymore, but this might be the moment where all of Chris's random invites in the middle of me playing literally anything but Apex may come to fruition.
Just do it.
I would just be playing, and I just always love telling the story of Chris doing it to me, and then me messaging and being like, "Did you mean to invite me to Apex?"
I really
so dryly, you're like, "Yeah," and I said, "Why?" You're like, "You might play."
Yeah, exactly.
Which I guess is an honest answer. So. Let's see. The fall of CD Projekt Red continues as they've now delayed the next-gen versions of Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077 to 2022. You'll have to wait to play the most overrated video game of all time. I knew you were going to do this to me, but here we are. And the most broken video game of all time and all their next-gen glory until sometime next year. So I'll take a second here, Chris. I want to deal with what you got going on here.
Sure.
For you to be throwing some shade, you sure did partake in this game, at least one of them. The most broken video game of all time, you pushed through and platinumed.
Yeah,
are you
77 crashes.
Are you a madman?
Yes.
Then there might just be hope for you yet in Death Stranding.
Oh, I'm getting Death Stranding.
It's going to, if it ends up being something like you keep working on, what do you got? I'm still trying to rebuild all these homo farm or whatever thing you were talking about.
I mean, on Tuesday, I'm not playing Death Stranding anymore. So, Tuesday is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh,
which I didn't mention in what I'm playing, but I have played some Deus Ex: Mankind Revolution.
I saw you downloaded it.
Yeah, it's Eidos Montreal, same dev. So I was like, I might as well.
Okay, Mankind Divided. I did not like at all.
The latest one, the PS Plus one.
The one that starts with you in like a little area with, I almost want to call it like a bazaar, but all the little, you're stealthing out at first and then.
Yeah, it was like in Dubai, like you get dropped off in the roof. Yeah, that's
Brett
the one
gave me that game for free.
I did?
And I gave it away to somebody else. I didn't even trade it in.
That game sucks.
I did not like it.
Okay, hold on. I didn't like that game. I can't say it sucks. I didn't get far enough. I did not like that game at all. Yeah. I played for roughly an hour and was like, this ain't it, Chief. This plays like dog trash to me. This is some of the worst third-person cover-based shooting I've ever experienced in a game. I was just not enjoying it. So I
didn't play it as a third-person shooter when I first played it, so that might be why I liked it more. It's like a full-on stealth game for me.
Yeah, but when you break stealth in any game, right? And I actually do normally do that pretty early in any game. I try to break stealth just to see what happens and what your means are in case, because I don't want to play a game for 7 hours, then break stealth on accident and be left with, I don't exactly know what to do in this situation.
Yeah.
So I normally do it up front pretty early so that I have an understanding while the enemies aren't crazy of how I might navigate that situation. And sometimes it's easier. I think games like Dishonored, the powers just continuously show you, even if you're using them for something else, what you can do. But Chris,
yes,
do you actually think you'd play Cyberpunk again if it got all fixed up?
Yes,
I thought you would, Because for as much as that you complained about the fact that it was very broken, which it is, I'm not taking that away from anything. You seem to really enjoy your time with it, as did I.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not. It's not. I don't think it's a bad game because my whole thing when people ask me about it is like it crashed almost 80 times on me in my 110 hours, and I still got the platinum in it. I had to replay the entire game over because one side quest was broken, and I still did it because I enjoyed playing it so much. So
yeah. And I'm actually curious to see, because, you know, they were talking about some of the things they want to do in it and like some of the ways they want to change enemy AI, gang AI, where gangs actually pay attention to if you've helped them or hurt them in the past. And that changes whether they aggro you. Because, you know, the current version of the game, all gangs just aggro you immediately.
Yeah.
And this will be like, oh, okay, you've got some good standing with this group. Okay, then we're going to make it to where they don't attack you on site unless you aggro them. That's cool. Changing cop AI around, also a good idea. So there's some things that I kind of want to see play out. They're apparently changing some of the skill tree stuff around to be better, which I think is a good move because the skill tree is okay, but I found there was a lot that just I couldn't see any build really leaning into very much and going a little more RPG with it. Saul, are you still curious about Cyberpunk at all?
Yeah, I still want to play it. I have waited.
It's just that wait.
Yeah, and now I have to wait even more. And I can't say that I'm surprised. I'm just I'm disappointed and surprised, or not surprised.
Well, I'm not angry. I'm
not angry.
Yeah, the weird thing here is that this is the right move.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, obviously, it's like with Elden Ring. Elden Ring was also delayed too. We'll get to that here in a second.
Yeah,
but and I will never fault somebody for delaying a game to improve it. That's not what you should do. You should embrace the fact that it was delayed. It may be frustrating, but you shouldn't say it's wrong.
Yeah,
because you don't want a broken game. But at this point, it's like, come on, people. Like, this game was delayed 3 times before its initial launch, right? Or is it twice?
3 sounds right, because it was delayed a lot.
And then 3 sounds low to me.
And this is
3 does sound low, but I think when I say delays, I mean like official, we have a date and we're changing it. We have a date and we're changing it. And we have a JPEG. Yeah, I mean, we got that before. Where it was like, we were originally hoping to be able to start showing off Cyberpunk, but we've decided to delay that internally. That's a different thing, but yeah.
It's just, it's frustrating. I want to play Cyberpunk, and I refuse to. It's like, like I said about Star Wars Battlefront 2. I refuse to buy that game with the marketing it had and the way it was doing its microtransactions at launch. And I said, I refuse to buy it at full price. I refuse to give EA $60 of my money. Doesn't mean if it doesn't go to $20 that I might check it out, especially like now, if I was to buy Battlefront 2. The game's like $12. That's not going to their profit line that far. But with like Cyberpunk's a different beast. I was just going to not buy it at all until it's fixed. There's been very few games like that where I just refuse, even when it's on sale. If they fix it, and if it works well, it's a 60 frames per second, 1080p or 1440p at 60, whatever they can manage with no bugs, no crashes, I will happily pay $60 for it.
Or at least the standard range of what do they call that?
The level of forgiveness,
margin of error.
Yeah,
you have a typical margin of error that any game operates within. Yeah,
and I mean major, like what he said, how one single side quest crashed, like he had to start his whole game over.
Yeah,
if I play in a game that costs $60 and that happens to me, it's out the window. Like, I don't even have the disc version of it. I'll go 3D print a disc version for Cyberpunk. I'll go buy it. I'll go to Best Buy. I'll get one of those $10 still cases. I'll put it in there. I'll throw it out the window. It's not worth it to me.
Yeah,
and that's not to say that this can happen, once, like in a blue moon on any normal game, because that can happen. That's not what the story is with this game, though. It happens a lot to random people.
Yeah,
and not game breaking crashes to be exact, even though there are some. But yeah, just the amount of jank this game launched with.
Yeah, the wildest thing about that game was how each patch I felt like made every single person's experience with it marginally, like crazy different. Not even marginally, but like crazily different. Because there was a point in time where the game patched and I did not have a crash the entire patch window, and Chris was crashing like every 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the game patched again, and I was crashing like once an hour at that point. And it went from being able to play like a good 15 hours without a crash to suddenly being like, what is going on? So it's a very interesting idea for a story of what to. It's the whole caution story idea. But I think that they're smart here because The Witcher 3 still has so much. The Witcher in general still has so much good PR for them and like gamer goodwill, that they're in this idea of like, just drop it and do not risk doing anything that would put a subpar Witcher 3 out because they need to keep that goodwill with the majority of people that still love them. You know what I mean? Or at least are still willing to love them. Like, I'm almost curious if they can put out a really great next-gen Witcher 3 and then also release a Cyberpunk that's not broken, how likely is it that they have a swift turnaround after those two things? You know, do you think it'll be more of a slow rebuild of trust still, or do you think if those two things come out and prove themselves, can we start to see them kind of rebuild what they had going?
No, all they need to do is do exactly what they did when Witcher 3 also came out broken. They're going to release a bunch of free cosmetic DLC. They're going to apologize, and then they're going to release a really good DLC pack for Cyberpunk, and no one will remember again.
Did Witcher 3 launch broken?
Yes.
It not to this level, but it did have bugs.
Yeah.
I have a video of me being in a boat, rowing, and then suddenly Geralt standing up, flying into the air about 20 feet, and then landing back in the boat with 0 damage done to me at all, and I kept going. It's one of the funniest videos I've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's real goofy and weird, but the game wasn't broken to the same degree. I never had The Witcher crash on me at all. It was like Bethesda buggy. You know what I mean?
No game has ever been Cyberpunk broken, so I think Cyberpunk almost broke the word broken in a way.
Yeah, it's really in a league of its own.
I think No Man's Sky at launch got close.
In terms of outrage?
No, in terms of crashing.
I didn't have that.
I
don't think I've ever had that game.
That was like the mass reporting of that game was that like your PlayStation would not it crash, it blue screen. That's not the correct term for it, is what people would use, but because all crash screens are blue.
Yeah, sure. I never.
That was a massive complaint among people.
I played that game a lot at launch too. I don't think
it happened to Annie. She played that's why she doesn't want to play the game now, even though it's fixed. It's like she would walk forward, crash. She'd restart it, walk forward, crash. It wouldn't play. It's almost like what happened with The Last Guardian. I would do one specific action to leave a place and crash, and I'm like, okay, this is not worth it. After like the third or fourth time.
And it's also weird how much a single PlayStation can have the system itself could just play the game differently.
Yeah.
Because I played through the entirety of Uncharted 3 without a single crash, and Seth was playing right beside me, and his whole game world just fell apart. And Nathan just started dropping through the entire game world. And he was like, what? And it kept happening every single time he got to the same spot. So...
You want to hear a funny story about No Man's Sky? I was one of the first people to realize that multiplayer doesn't exist because I met up with someone on launch day only to have it not work.
Oof. So hold on, you worked your way to get to the same area as them?
No, someone messaged me and was like, hey, we're in the same planet. And we spent like an hour trying to go around and find each other, and it wasn't possible because they lied.
Oh, no. Terrible. All right. Next thing up. Let's see. Speaking of CDPR, they have acquired indie studio Molasses Flood, which is the studio behind the Flame in the Flood. And also Drake Hollow, which I've not seen Drake Hollow, but the Flame in the Flood was interesting. They are working on a project with one of CDPR's IP. They haven't said which one. The studio supposedly maintains full autonomy despite being under the brand, so they will not change their name. Pretty interesting choice. And clearly we know that they still have tons of money, not only from Cyberpunk still selling really well, despite the fact that it was broken, which is also one of the most amazing parts of gaming history, that arguably the most broken game of all time also sold incredibly well.
15 million copies.
But also the fact that they have so much money elsewhere, right? They have the GOG money that they can sit there and play around with. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them try and look elsewhere to be like, hey, can we buy Saber Interactive? Because they use Saber for like all of their ports.
Yeah. Well,
so
isn't Saber owned? I think Embracer Group owns Saber.
Oh, is that true?
I'm almost 100% sure, yeah. I'll double check.
Interesting, because if so, I didn't see that end up happening because they've released games under Focus Home Interactive, and I don't know why they would choose to do that.
Yeah, they bought them for $525 million.
Wild. Saber's a good studio, though, so I'm not surprised. I completely missed that. Thanks, Chris.
Of course.
All right, next thing up, God of War 2018 is officially coming to PC to what should be absolutely no one's surprise. in January of 2022. Chris's note here in the news is fanboys everywhere died. I've seen some people that were like, God of War will never come. I never felt like that was the way that it was going to happen. It just never quite made sense to me. With the moment that they said Uncharted, I was like, oh yeah, they're whole hog in. They're whole hog in. That's exactly.
I wonder what possibly could be next to come to PC.
Maybe a Born of Blood.
I would imagine so.
How long do you guys think before the inevitable Demon Souls on PC hits?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Okay. It would be hilarious.
So you say 2 years from today or from launch? Today? I don't think so. I think from launch.
It'll be very funny when it's the Darkest Night bundle and it's Demon Souls and Bloodborne next year for PC.
That could actually be interesting. I don't think it would work that way, but that would be interesting.
It wouldn't work that way because that's two $70 games.
Yeah, they know they can sell for. Yeah. Well, what they'll do on PC is sell them for 60 or 50 even. You know it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Bloodborne might do full price.
I think Bloodborne will be full price on PS5 and PC. There's no reason to give that game a discount.
Yeah, but consider if it's day and date. Now, if Bloodborne comes to PC non-day and date, I could see them doing the slightly drop price because if I'm not mistaken, Horizon was 50 on PC. No, Stranding's 50 on PC, even though that wasn't Sony. To be fair, just a good example of how that goes. Days Gone was $50 on PC. So I think Sony knows, and there's kind of that thing, right, where Steam talks about that Gabe Newell quote where he's like, how do you deal with piracy? You just make it a good enough deal that people would rather just spend the money than have to go through the loopholes of piracy.
Yeah, I just think Bloodborne is so old, and it won't matter. That
like how Andrew was just Sasquatch on the camera. Just like, no, it's just the way that like you kind of like walked by and then you were out of frame. Like I wish I shouldn't have said anything. I just saw someone was like, "Who's that guy that just walked in the background?"
Pretended there was never anyone there.
Like, what are you talking about, man? But anyway, so Saul, how you feeling about these this new PlayStation or another PlayStation game rather coming to PC?
That's fun. I think it's good. Like I've said before, the more the merrier. And I saw somebody, I forgot who it was, but it was like it was a screenshot on the PlayStation. Was it PlayStation or is it the PlayStation 5 subreddit? It was one of the two. And the title was "Please Don't Be Like This." And it was some verified user on Twitter. I'm not going to name them on the show, but they were like, this is what's wrong with Sony. And it was the screenshot of like God of War on Steam. I'm like, please don't be like that.
I just think it's weird for people to be surprised by it at this point when Sony has gone out of their way to say that this is clearly their goal.
Yeah. I will play devil's advocate though. I do think it kind of sucks to advertise your console and sell people on the console with these exclusive games, and then after people have bought the game and the console to be like, sucker. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I just see the argument of I was sold on the PS5 for God of War, for Uncharted, for The Last of Us, and then being like, this kind of sucks, but it's also really dumb to care. You know what I mean? I just think there's I understand the argument some people have. I just don't think they make the right one.
Well, and that's people will say like, I bought a PlayStation 4 to play this game. Well, did you? Did you get to? You got to? Okay, well, didn't you get the value out of it then? Like, even if it goes to PC a year later, 2 weeks later.
To me, the day and date of it all is where I think that line gets a little. I don't want to even say crossed. It's clearly Sony's property. They can do what they want to with it. But to Chris's point, I think when you do advertise off this idea of exclusivity and I bought this to play this, I think as long as there's a gap between them, it's a pretty fair argument to be like, did you buy the system for that? Did you get to play it? Did you get to play it a year before everyone else did? Well, the problem, or whatever. And then at that point, as Chris said, it's still technically them advertising something as an exclusive. But I think that it really doesn't matter at that point. Well, but at the same time, right? If they ever do become day and date, I would imagine that they would stop actually advertising as exclusive in the same way. You know what I mean?
That's the problem people have nowadays. It's like it's you'll see a trailer for a game and it'll say console launch exclusive.
Yeah,
that typically means PC and console. Sometimes it doesn't mean PC at all.
Yeah,
and there is no line anymore.
Well, a good example is Final Fantasy VII Remake, a game that said coming first to PlayStation and has never been talked about again in any capacity.
Yep.
And there's been people who have dug up the fact that Sony paid to extend that deal, apparently, with the PS5 version. But at this point, with all these other games, too, like Forspoken and all this stuff coming, it almost makes you wonder, like, what are the chances that Final Fantasy VII Remake just doesn't come to PC? And would Sony even want that when they're literally putting their own games on PC? Why would they tell a third party to stop and don't put their game on PC?
I think Sony only cares that it doesn't come to Xbox.
Me too. I could see that. I think the agreement probably up front was don't go to Xbox, go to PC all day whenever you're ready. But clearly Sony saw some value in making sure that Final Fantasy VII Remake Intrograde came out as a PS5, still only PS5 exclusive.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't see Sony changing to a day and date anytime soon, because of the fact that they've seemed to work diligently to not have that happen and kind of keep this idea. Like I still think that the shortest time that we'll see for the next few years of between a release on PlayStation and then a release on PC will be a year.
If you want my hot prediction, pull a Shafe dog here. Twisted Metal will be day and date on PC.
You know what? That's actually going back to what I was talking about in general of Sony using their ability to be a little more nimble and make smaller budget games to kind of fill out the fact that it takes their bigger studios longer to make this very high-end budgeted game. I think the best way to do risk assessment there and risk aversion is to release those games day and date on PC, as crazy as that is. I think that if they came and were like, hey, we're doing a third-person top-down Killzone game again, then we're going to be... You good? Anyway, it's going to be like, oh, here's our third-person Killzone game. It's day and date on PC just so that we have a higher chance of re-meeting our goal of cost here.
Yeah. I just think games that need a player base will come day and date with the new Sony. And I also wonder, because Nixxes isn't doing God of War. Nixxes isn't doing Uncharted. They're not doing Bloodborne. So I almost wonder
allegedly
if Bluepoint's doing Bloodborne. I think that we could be looking at a situation where Nixxes was bought to simultaneously put some of these games day and date on PC.
I mean, we'll see in the long run. I definitely, part of why I think we're not seeing Nixxes doing these things yet is that they were happening beforehand. You know
for sure. Yeah, I just wonder at this point, like with God of War, like God of War could have been it. Uncharted's not them, and that's a couple months out. I don't know how long this takes to.
Nor do I. Yeah,
but I just wonder if maybe that's why they were bought specifically to be like, okay, I don't know, Naughty Dog, you're working on The Last of Us Remastered. We're going to work simultaneously with you to put this on PC, so you guys can focus on PS5. But we'll make the PC version in conjunction with you to launch day and date. I wonder if that's something they might do. Because The Last of Us Remastered would be a really good candidate for day and date because of the TV show and because it's an already established game. It might be a situation where we're like, okay, we want as many eyes on this for the show as possible. So we're going to put The Last of Us Remastered on PC day and date.
Well, and similar thing for The Last of Us, I feel could be true of Bloodborne too, where it's I don't mean this in any derogatory way, of course, but it's an old game. And it's been exclusive for so long that coming back around with it, the people on PS5 who just want to be able to play it as a 60 frames per second and some stuff switched around, changed around, that also depends on whether it's a remaster or a remake. It would be so crazy if it's actually a Bloodborne remake, which is something that's been rumored, that it's not a remaster, it is a remake. That would be interesting. But remake, I could see maybe being not day and date, but if it's just a remaster, I see zero reason for it not to be day and date.
Please give me a Bloodborne remake by Bluepoint.
Well, and look,
like actually, a remake, like Demon's Souls.
Yeah, to go not necessarily against, but I guess to better clarify what I was saying about the 1 year gap between release. I think the difference there is whenever they're just remastering titles, and a good example of that we're already seeing in action is that Uncharted is still coming to console first. The what do they call that, the Thief Collection or whatever it's actually called. Uncharted 4 and the Lost Legacy. Those two games are still hitting PS5 first, but they said the PC version should be releasing within a couple of months of that. So that's a good example of where I'm assuming the reason that's being is, or I say I'm assuming, I wonder if the reason that's being is because the PC version just won't be ready, but they want to go ahead and let the PS5 go, or is it still that they want to have that little window of exclusivity for PS5 just for the people like Chris is talking about of, I bought this for exclusives. Why are you giving my exclusives day and dates elsewhere?
Well, I don't know. I think that would be kind of weird in a situation where they automatically say that, where it's like, hey, they announced it as PC and PS5 so that we know it's not exclusive.
Sure.
So it's not, I don't know. I hesitate to use this phrase, but it's the only thing I can think of. It's not a like pull the wool over someone's eyes thing in that sense, where I think the argument comes in later when you're like, the best exclusives here, God of War, and then 5 years later, you're like, oh, I could have just bought a 3080. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I come in on it more of like, yeah, they're not day and date there. So yes, they are exclusives. But if I'd known, okay, God of War will eventually come to PC, I might have bought it. I wouldn't have, obviously, but someone might have bought a 3080 and upgraded their PC and just was willing to wait. And instead they were like, okay, I'm going to buy this PS5 because you're telling me these are exclusives. So that's where I see most of that, to kind of wrap back around to the point I was making.
Yeah, and I see that, but I think wrapping back around to Saul's point in that too, just as kind of an addendum there, I do think that there still is that thing of like, nowhere in that situation is Sony saying, right, that, and not saying you're saying it, just kind of an interesting clarification and kind of a look for people that do look at these things. In that situation where you could have waited, Sony's basically saying, do you want to play these great gaming experiences in the earliest possible form? Mm-hmm. Or do you want to wait and kind of be out of the zeitgeist of the moment of when everybody else is playing it? And that's just hey, we're going to give you that opportunity down the road. And then it's just your freedom of choice of whether or not you want to do that. Now, of course, like you're saying, it's something that they didn't tell you, so you didn't know to make a decision. But, as anything, definitely now, I think if anybody's looking at PS5 games and not thinking, I really want to play that day one? If I'm not pressed to play it day one, then I'll wait and see if it ends up hitting PC, because it probably will. I think that's probably the best way to approach this now. Yeah,
listen, so. I'm a baseball fan and a Red Sox fan. So when Johnny Damon won a World Series with us in 2004 and then went to the Yankees, that man is hated in Boston now. So I get where like the kind of exclusive upset people get when something migrates away to a potentially rival console. So I guess I'm more sympathetic to the argument.
Well, that's where I think PC is interesting. I don't think most people view PC as a rival console. I think that the difference between God of War coming to PC in terms of fan poor reaction. Oh my God, that's amazing. Anyway, a fan poor reaction versus if they were to say right now God of War 2018 is coming to Xbox, it would be waves different. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. So, I would love to see that though. That would be fascinating.
There you go, Chris. Take a look at that. I want to take a moment here in between this news. Well, really, we'll talk about it after, because I think it actually might even lead to an interesting full topic. It's something that happened to Saul. I just think it's interesting.
Oh, the leak thing?
Yeah. So we'll wait. We'll wait till news. So next thing up, VGC reports that a new Splinter Cell is supposedly finally in production, and there is a chance that it is set to be revealed in 2022. Not released, revealed. This is not too surprising, right? Because Ubisoft has basically teased and hinted and talked about the fact that they've been looking at how to bring Splinter Cell back around. And then they've kind of like, I don't want to say pulled the rug out from people, but some people felt like they did when it was like, oh, never mind. It's just Splinter Cell stuff inside of like Ghost Recon, or, oh, it's just Splinter Cell as a guest character inside of this. But my argument there is, why would they be worrying about doing all of that if that didn't mean that they had a potential to like want to look at fan reaction, see how hype people got, so they could say, is it finally time to look at this and kind of bring it back into production? So even though I guess this is a report, so a report is a little different than a straight up rumor, but they're still similar in the sense of you shouldn't set your goals thinking that it will absolutely happen, because anything could change from here to now. The game could be canceled. Who knows? I am not a huge Splinter Cell fan. I'm going to throw that out there. I don't think it's a bad game series. I've just never gotten too big into it, partially because it was exclusive to Xbox for a long time by nature of just how that, because the first Splinter Cell was an original Xbox exclusive, right?
No.
Or did it hit Xbox first?
No, I don't think so.
Well, 360 for sure had an exclusive Splinter Cell.
Maybe
Yes,
so, but
they did. It was
Conviction, but that's when that series
Conviction
became trash. There's only 3 Splinter Cell games, by the way.
Yeah,
there's only 3 of them, because anything after Chaos Theory is.
I think Blacklist is the one that's owned. No, it came to PS3 and Wii U.
I was gonna say
Conviction's the one.
Yeah,
Conviction is the one.
Yeah.
I knew for sure there was one there. I never played the original Splinter Cell that was on original Xbox, but for some reason it felt like it was exclusive to me. I didn't know if it was kind of like reverse Grand Theft Auto, where it hit Xbox first and then waited to come to PlayStation.
Maybe so, but remember that's what I was telling you, where I learned that L3 and R3 in a PS2 controller, because it came in a PlayStation Magazine demo disc.
Splinter Cell,
and that was the original Splinter Cell game. That was back when I was like, it was 2000 and it had to have been 2004 to 2003.
Sure.
And when did the original Splinter Cell come out?
Or we're about to find out. It looks like 2002 was the first one.
Yeah, because I go by things like where I was at school, like what school I was at, because of what friends I was hanging around.
Also, there's way more than that. There's Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow, Chaos Theory, Double Agent, Conviction, and Blacklist.
Yeah, and there's only 3 of them. There's only 3 Splinter Cell games. So I love Splinter Cell. I hope that this is a remake / reboot of the series with a young Sam Fisher or younger Sam Fisher. I don't want them to go off with old Sam Fisher as he is now. I think that they did some dumb stuff with his character, and I really like the original Splinter Cell series. I say that I liked all the way up to Chaos Theory, because after that they kind of just lost their charm, and I am really excited to see if we ever actually get a Splinter Cell game. Like seeing Sam Fisher in was it Breakpoint?
Yeah, Breakpoint had his gear.
Yeah, and him as a character, it was kind of cool the way he introduced him, but then he was just like another standalone like character off there to the side who was like all military man with no personality.
Hold on, wait, was he in the game? I thought his gear was just in the game.
No, he was in the game. And it was lame. It might have been Wildlands. I get those two confused.
Wait, hold on, what?
Was it Breakpoint? You go to him for quest. That does not say 30.
Sam's call sign
62.
Deep Blue in Breakpoint is a reference to the chess playing computer.
No, he's like a standable NPC. And I don't think his name's Sam Fisher, though. Hold on. Maybe it is. But yeah, I love that series, and I am ready for it to come back.
Weird. All right. Yeah, it doesn't mean much to me, but I know it's a beloved series. So at that point, I just hope for everybody else's sake they get what they want out of it. You know what I mean?
Just play Hitman 3.
You're not wrong.
I guess. How similar is the Hitman series to Splinter Cell?
I don't know. It's
because I played a good bit of the Hitman series, but not any of the newer ones. I haven't played any of the ones for PS4.
Okay, well, you should play Hitman 3. You have no excuse.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, here we are. The next thing that you two are so excited to talk about, we finally got to look at the trailer for the terribly named, Chris, your news is so great. The trilogy, Grand Theft Auto, the trilogy, the definitive edition. It looks great and launches November 11th for $59.99 on everything on God's green earth.
It looks fantastic.
Capable of playing modern video games.
It looks so good. I'm so excited to play these.
I do think I saw the trailer and it does look, it does look what I imagined, because it's important that the games have their style and they still look like the original games, but they do that thing of what Bluepoint talks about, where a little less though, right? But still there, where Bluepoint's like, you want the game to look like people remembered it looking like.
I say upset. I got so confused whenever I was like, I saw this on Reddit, and then actually I think the way it happened was like a picture of it got leaked first, and then Rockstar leaked the trailer, and there was like a play-by-play of it in the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit. And like I clicked on that, and I watched it, and like the next day or like later that night, I saw the one on the PS5 subreddit. So I clicked it, and I was just reading comments, and somebody's like, "This looks like trash." And then somebody was like, "What do you mean this looks like trash? This is exactly how I remembered the game." That's 100% true for me too.
Yeah, and it's actually a huge
looking
visual upgrade. But it's what it looks as sharp as you remember the game looking.
Did people think this was going to have a realistic art style like Grand Theft Auto 5 and 4 did? Because that's not what the original ones looked like.
That's the thing. People absolutely thought that this was we're putting all these games in the GTA 5 engine. It's going to look like GTA 5. It's a full-on remake.
I don't know why they thought
why
that.
would you think that? All they
when
did
they
was
said
put it
it's
in
Unreal
in
3 and not Rage, because
Dude.
Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead 2 are and Red Dead 1 and Grand Theft Auto 4 are all the Rage engine.
Not even that. These games are coming to iOS and Android.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. How that didn't set your expectations properly blows me away. It's just people who wanted to be mad.
What's the main character of GTA 3?
Claude.
GTA 3?
Claude. That's the one that I played like 20 minutes of as a kid I didn't like, so I'm hoping that changes.
The wild thing is I platinumed San Andreas during quarantine, and it looks like I remember San Andreas looking last year. You know what I mean? So
well, your memory is like a crazy thing. It really makes things look way better than you like. A good example, right? And you can still appreciate it, but a good example was that driver game on Grand Theft on Game Boy Advance that Saul was talking about playing, where it's like I remember that looking amazing.
That game looked awful as an adult.
It's technically impressive for a Game Boy Advance, but it did not look good. But yeah, I actually kind of like the thicker outline style which the original games have, but it's because it's a cleaner image now. It almost has this like it's kind of hard to describe, but it has like this almost cell shaded look to it now, but still with some realistic textures in there. I was really impressed. The lighting and reflection systems added to the car is amazing.
I was gonna say that's what it is. It's the art style versus the actual lighting and reflection system is what gives it a like almost uncanny valley, but like in a good way. Look,
you know that cutscene where it's like there's a lot of stuff. Like I think the environment looks great, but I'm glad like the small touches where they showed CJ and the crew sitting in the kitchen talking. Yeah, dude, that looks so good. I was like, that's honestly amazing. That looks really good.
The ones that really got me were the GTA 3, like they have that shot where it pans over and he's driving forward.
Yeah, and like
I'm like, that looks so sick.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for this.
I'll tell you, this is the most excited I've been about a Grand Theft Auto, and I still don't know. But the thing is I know Chris is going to buy it, so I have zero cost of entry. I can see if I can reconnect with Grand Theft Auto for the games that I actually did like. You know,
I should just stand there and be like, "No, you buy it. You buy it. You do it."
Never going to happen, buddy.
Well, and my thing is like, GTA 3 as a kid looked boring, right? Like it looked. I didn't play it as a kid because it looked boring when I had that and Vice City, because that's what happened. My buddy came over and he was like, dude, you should play these games. And the first one he booted up was Vice City on PS2, right? And I'm like, oh, you could like go drive cars and steal them and like go do whatever you want. This is fun. And then he's like, well, here's the other one. And in comparison to Vice City, GTA 3 was just gray, right? I was like, oh, this doesn't look as fun.
Yeah, for color, because they did that kind of neon side and the sunset beach and stuff like that for Vice City.
Other than playing like the 30 minutes of 3 or the 1 hour of 3 that I did, I've never played it. So I'm excited to go back and play it.
Well, and Vice City added a lot of features,
as an adult,
right? So playing that first, I could see that. I actually played the games in order of release. I didn't beat them in order of release.
I never
But my dad was, my dad's a big gamer. Definitely was back then. And so we were kind of in that thing of he would get the games and then he would just let me play them. And my mom hated that. But, here I am. I came out. Did Grand Theft Auto 3 come out in 2001?
Yeah, 2000, I believe.
Or was it 2000? Okay, because I think they were 2 years.
No, it was 2001 because it's the 20th anniversary right now. So
okay, yeah, because I was thinking 2001, 03, and 2005 for the years of release of each one. That feels right. But anyway, I remember playing each one of them as they were going along, and it was very interesting because they are very different games, but you appreciate how much they add between each game when you play them in order of release and have time between them. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I could definitely see playing Vice City first and then going back to Grand Theft Auto 3 and being like, eh? But actually of them all, I think I like 3 more than I like Vice City. 3's got a really good story. Vice City's still good. It's my least favorite of the 3. So you know what, though? I can't wait to walk around to CJ and just get buff and fat and get haircuts and go custom out my ride. I'll tell you, in terms of just playing.
Go look for Bigfoot.
In sheer playing, not Vice City, San Andreas is just fun. It will, or at least it was back then. It was just fun to play. Whereas I would screw around on Grand Theft Auto 3, but I'd only do that for about 30 minutes. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to go play story. I'm going to go see what I can do here.
I hope the soundtracks and the radio stations remain the same.
Dude, that is that's licensing hell. I don't know how they're going to do it. I hope they do, but I don't know how they're going to do it.
That would honestly be one of the first things that I'd be hesitant to buy in the game is if there was nothing the same. They didn't even have like a single song from the originals. I'm like, ooh.
We've updated our radios to be more in line with modern audiences.
have a ton of Machine Gun Kelly. And like,
What did that just happen on? Resident Evil 4 VR?
Yeah, RE4.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh my. I don't know. I can't. I'm trying to think if the iOS releases had the soundtracks.
They did. It's all the same.
So then, yeah, I would imagine they are. Even though it's still a licensing nightmare, but Rockstar would be foolish not to try and spend the money to make it happen because they're going to make so much money out of this.
I'm shocked. I don't remember what game I was reading about it with, where they were trying to remake it. It might have been Tony Hawk, where they were saying they were having so much trouble with the music that they've started adding into contracts. Like, we have this license in perpetuity for any release of this game again. So hopefully they did something like that.
Right. Well, that's kind of like if you look at like Silent Hill 2, at the time that they did that, if you remember the Silent Hill HD collection, they had 2 and 3. Originally, they had to announce that they couldn't use the original voice because there was no written contract at the point in time, because it was such an early days for voice acting in games that they literally just did verbal contracts for everybody. People came in, they were like, hey, you're going to do this, right? And they're like, yeah. And that's how it worked. So then when it came time to re-release it, one of the main voice actor for, how am I skipping on his name right now? Saul, main character for Silent Hill 2. I can't believe
Silent Hill guy.
James, isn't it?
James, yeah.
I was like, don't mess with me now. I'm say it. I'm like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, that voice actor came back and was like, no, you can't use this without paying me more and all these different things. You'd have to do this, and it was unfair contracts.
James Sutherland.
And it got really out of hand, and they ended up coming around to finally getting him to calm down. And even though they recorded all new voice for everybody, they were able to finally re-include the original voice acting in the game again. But Silent Hill 3 didn't fare so well, and they had to completely revoice every bit of that game. Oof. And people were furious. It didn't help that at the same time of revoicing everything, they also edited the script, which
sounds about right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's weird how that stuff goes in games, because there's so many games I love that you will never see re-released because it's just like, oh, it's a licensing nightmare. Like, Square would have to basically completely drop every bit of music within Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core to be able to bring it back around. And I think that they're just like, I just don't want to do it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So, I don't know. I'm very excited for these. These look great. GTA 3 is my favorite. So
GTA 3 is a really great game. And it's weird because I say that, and I know that sounds weird to people who are like, but you say you're not interested in Grand Theft Auto. I'm not. And even this, I still, if I'm being honest, I don't think I'm going to really play any of these. But I still have fond memories of these games. It's just I don't care to play that style of game as much anymore. That's kind of what it is. But 3 and Liberty City Stories both have great stories.
Yeah. I just think it's funny to me that so far my game of the year is probably going to be 5 games that released like 10 years ago.
Oh man. Okay, next thing up, Elden Ring, as Saul mentioned earlier, got delayed from January to February 25th. A network test for the game has been announced in conjunction. You could try and sign up through From Software's website. There's not really much to say about that. Saul's already kind of said it. A delayed game is the right move. The only downside here is I actually almost wish they would have delayed further. Like, just move it into March, please.
Yeah. I don't know if it was you or it was my buddy, but there's no chance I'm playing Elden Ring now. No chance.
I mean, I'm definitely going to play it. When is a big question because there's too much.
Yeah. There's just
all From Software games I play for like a month long. So I don't know how the hell I'm going to play, and the way I am with games, I won't want to play anything else if I start this. So I have to be strategic.
Yeah, because this is Dying Light and Horizon for me that month. Like, there's no chance I'm touching Elden Ring.
Yeah,
those games get in the boot for me.
Oh, trust me, I know.
Yeah, that game, that I will be playing nothing but unless that game is a total flop fest. Like, unless I play that game and it's like, this feels like Dark Souls 1, like half speed or something crazy, which is not going to. But if something happened with that game that like it was just not, it doesn't click with me. But I don't foresee that happening. It'd be rare.
We'll see. I'm definitely excited for the game. It's still that, where do I work it in? Because it's like, I feel like February, I have to schedule out my games. 2 weeks for Horizon, 2 weeks for this. I don't know.
I'm 100% taking a week off for that.
I might do the same. Actually, I still got 2 weeks of vacation. That will help if I can actually just sit down. I would be able to start Elden Ring a lot sooner if I can like just take 1 week to play Horizon the whole week.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and get that knocked out because Horizon comes out the week before, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Or is it 2 weeks before? I think it's 1 week before.
It's either one or two, but it's before.
So much going on. So we'll see. Next thing up news-wise, we finally know what developer Concerned Ape is working on after one of the greatest games of all time in his basement. Chris, I'm telling you, your news style is very different than mine, and it's very funny to read. I'm sorry. We gotta first look at The Haunted Chocolatier, a game that follows closely in Stardew Valley's footsteps, but sees the player take on the role of a chocolatier serving ghosts.
I can't wait.
It's going to be interesting to see. I'm not surprised this rich man has decided to, and I say that with all love. You deserve every penny. But he's going on being like, you know what would be great after I make a farming game? I want to serve some chocolate to a ghost.
I don't know if either of you watched the trailer.
I did.
It looks so good. I'm so excited. I posted it in the Discord. No one else seems to be as excited as me, but whatever.
I've just had a busy weekend, so I haven't. Depending on when you posted it,
the Nartec one. So
yeah,
everyone is leaving me high.
Everyone's sleeping on the chocolatier,
which you should be in. It's in our description below. You could join it and chit chat with the boys.
Bang, bang, bang. Let's see. Next thing up, Suda51 Studio Grasshopper Manufacture has been acquired by NetEase, which I did not realize until this. So, Chris, you've definitely given me something to look at. Suda and the studio is behind classic series like Travis Strikes Again and No More Heroes, as well as countless other games. Like genuinely countless other games, yes.
Killer is Dead.
Yeah, I was going to say Killer is Dead is the GOAT one there.
Who made it? I'm trying to remember the developer because I don't think it was them, but it's just on my brain. You guys may not even remember it. It was an EA published game.
What's the name of the title?
Hold on, I'm trying to remember. It was
my emotions right now.
It was like a Dead Space style game, and you were like a guy of some kind of Latin descent who had a motorcycle. I just cannot remember the name right now. No. It's not called Killer's Dead.
It's the game It's where you play. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Oh boy, it came out in like 2010. It's on the cusp of my.
I know what it is, but I can't think of it. It's where like your body comes apart and you can control your body parts, right?
That might be right. Hold on, I'm trying to. It plays a lot like Dead Space. It's
Shadow of the Damned.
Shadow of the Damned. That is exactly it. Yes, Shadow of the Damned.
This game,
dude. This game's actually awesome, and it really reminds me of the heyday of EA, where you're going to.
Oh, never mind. I remember that.
You're going to save your girlfriend because she gets like taken. It's like if you tried mixing together Dead Space's gameplay with like a Dante Inferno style story.
That's cool.
Like you're digging deeper and deeper into like the depths of, I don't want to say hell, but that's kind of what it is.
But yes,
the sad part is I never got to beat it, but I thought that was Suda 51. Okay. Yes. I thought so. Dude, what a game too. You know what I mean? The thing is, I kind of want to go back and see if I can find it and beat it. I wonder if it's on PC at 60 frames per second, because that'd be the biggest problem playing it now. But dude, that game was awesome. I definitely want to go back. What problem is I want to say a soft lock. I got hard locked because of the save system. I screwed up and just messed around and wasted ammo, and then a save hit, and I could not literally. It was right before a boss. I couldn't do anything about it. I tried and tried. I was just stuck. But that's an awesome game.
It is $40 on PS5 or PS3. So
what?
On eBay, yeah, it's $49.
That's one of those cult classic things, isn't it?
Yeah, you definitely. Yeah, I was thinking like, I might order that. Nope, I am not playing that this time.
I would be willing to play that on PC so long as it's on PC, and of course, it is not. Why do they hate me? Hold on. No, it is. Why'd you lie to me?
It is. I don't know.
Oh, it says play it while you still can.
Yeah.
What's going on? Are they going to delist it?
Yeah, it's delisted for the Microsoft Store.
Whoa.
Yeah,
it'll be soon removed from EA Play. Is it just gone?
Yeah, it looks like it's dead. RIP. RIP in peace, baby.
See, and this is why people pirate games. It is. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. I would argue this is like the perfect time to pirate a game.
And this is also why people don't trust digital, because you would think, oh, it's digital. Okay, for the future, if I want to just go play this random game I've never heard of, I still have the opportunity without having to worry about all the disc being destroyed and put in a landfill in case it accidentally happened. Not that it would, but interesting. That's gonna really bum me out because I don't know what to do about that now.
Yeah, I just checked on Game Pass PC. It's not here, so that's too bad.
Yeah, but what about EA Origin?
EA Play is in Game Pass.
Well, EA Play is, but is Origin. Like, it doesn't mean the game's not included, but can you just still buy it from
I
Origin?
have no idea. I didn't download Origin onto my PC.
It's going to tell me that I have a feeling it's probably not. Dang it. That really bums me out.
Yeah, that's too bad. I would have liked to play it.
Yeah, that's a game I always meant to get back to. I was like, I'll just restart because I still really like this game. And here I am. Going to have to go buy it on PS3. They're killing me over here. Anyway, that studio got bought. I think that they are a studio full of very interesting games. And while I don't love every single one of them, I think that they are the kind of talent that there's no reason not to get behind. And I would rather see someone buy them than to see them somehow go bankrupt or anything like that. Not that they were going to, but they're just a really interesting studio. So
too bad
we'll
it was
see
China.
what ends up coming. Yeah, right. Too bad it was NetEase. Last thing, during Tomb Raider's 25th anniversary celebration, we got a look at a canceled Tomb Raider game, Tomb Raider more survival horror than action. Wait, what?
Oh, sorry.
You
I
wrote
missed
this.
it. Tomb
So you're
Raider
gonna have to-
Ascension.
Ascension. So more survival horror than action platformer.
Yes.
Ascension was eventually replaced by the 2013 reboot. Interesting. Survival horror Tomb Raider. I think that could work.
Yeah, I'd play the hell out of it.
I mean, I
can't.
like the 2013 reboot, to be fair, but
No, I
the
do
problem that everyone I've ever seen who played those, and of course, this is a blanket statement, be prepared for that. I liked every Tomb Raider game that they've done so far, but they're so non-memorable.
Yeah.
Arguably, I actually think the 2013 reboot is the most memorable of them all. It's the only one where I truly remember what happened.
Yeah.
Like, I remember parts of 2, something about Jesus and a tower. You know what I mean? I just played. That was what? Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Yeah.
And then what was the new one called?
Tomb Raider Among Thieves.
Yeah, that one. But yeah, just across the board, those games they're too close to other things that they end up being fun but unremarkable by the time that you get a couple years out from them. You're just like, that was an experience. Like I've had worse experiences. I've played Far Cry 6.
I think the only reason I remember Tomb Raider 1 or 2 is because I was very sick and I was playing it when my mom was like, you have to go to the hospital now.
Mom, hold on.
What kind of sickness were you?
I'm trying to save Jesus.
No,
Like,
I had ulcers, hernias, and hemorrhoids all at the same time.
Oh.
And I couldn't eat or smell food or I would throw up. So I lost like 100 pounds and had to be put on an IV.
Man.
Wow.
But you were dedicated, right? You're like, I've got to help Laura scale the Tower of Babylon.
No, I was just dealing like with the sickness because I was still working and all this shit. It was just like I would work at McDonald's and be like, I want a McDouble. I would eat it, and then 2 minutes later I would throw it up.
Oh.
And then I think that night I had come home from work, opened the fridge, smelled food, and I was like yucking and crying into the toilet. And Mom was like, yeah, we got to go to the hospital, bro.
Oh boy, that's rough.
It was not a fun.
Well, there we go. I mean, I'm always interested to see what they're actually going to do with Tomb Raider, but I feel like Tomb Raider is just, it's lost its big presence in gaming. Like, it can come out and it'll do fine and people know the character and know the stuff, but I don't feel like it ever really moves the needle enough anymore. Like, there are games that I'm always like, oh, that's cool. But at one point in time, I felt like a Tomb Raider game was like an event.
And you know what it is now? Generic.
And it's weird because I really enjoy a lot of it, but you're right. It's just I know I'm going to have a good time with it, but it's just nothing that special.
It's generic / safe.
Yeah. Well, and then the one time they tried not to be safe, people gave them hell for like basically including the threat of rape in the first game, which brings me to that weird thing. I was talking to someone yesterday. I don't get this idea of like you shouldn't write bad things that people do into games or into stories, because that makes for interesting. Not every story needs it, but it makes for potentially interesting stories, because the reality is a lot of humans are screwed up, and that can happen. And it's interesting to have flawed characters come in and get to see what's going on, and how the non-flawed characters, well, flawed in different ways, I guess, because Laura, of course, has her own things, deal with those situations and how they impact people. And I think that that's part of what made the first game the most memorable. Absolutely. And then every other game just became safer. And then, I mean,
it's one of those things. I completely agree with you. I mean, Ted Bundy saved lives at the suicide when he worked at the suicide hotline. Like, people are multifaceted.
Yeah, like for all the crazy things they do, they can do other things. And I don't know. It's weird. I think that people have a thing where they want to own in on something and not realize it's kind of the idea, like you're taking out of context and you're not looking at what the game's offering and what it's trying to do. All you know is that there's a threat of rape scene. It's not even a really rape scene. It's like a threat of rape. And that leads to a character moment of like tension, and seeing how Laura in a young, unexperienced state deals with this, and her friend being lost and all the fear that comes along with that. It's an interesting thing. But it is a shame that felt like the most interesting of all of them. And then they kind of got kneecapped from people arguably overreacting. Wow. And then I think the next two games, they were just like, we got to be careful of what we do. Because you know, in gaming, in AAA gaming, one bad PR piece, it could completely, cut you off. And that's a weird world to live in within gaming.
I wonder if that's going to change after Hogwarts comes out. I'm curious, because Hogwarts is going to be the best-selling game of that month.
I think Hogwarts is going to sell really well in spite of all the things that people are talking about around it.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was the best-selling game of that year. So, like, I wonder if people will be
Call of Duty still exists, buddy. So.
Have you heard of a little thing called Harry Potter?
Yes, I have, but Call of Duty is just different. I agree with you up to the point of I think that there are certain monoliths that just can't be beaten.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, the series that has had a number of games beforehand that have never have never become the greatest selling game of all time. Yes, this is probably the best shot at that, but I still don't think it's going to happen, Chris. I'm sorry.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, you can call me Shafe Dog now, okay? But that's my hot take. It's not going to happen.
Congrats, it will sell well.
I do agree with you. Shafe, we love you. We're just having a good time at your expense. And hopefully you know that we don't mean it in any kind of bad way.
Don't crash your mail truck.
Yes, please keep your grips about you. But that's the last thing on the news. And I think we're going to take this real quick to, of course, go into the community's take, which, remember, you can do by going to any of our social media that we pointed out. Or, of course, if you want to be that extra cool person, you can head over to patreon.com/Nartech and throw $1 in the hat and support the show. We appreciate all of you who do. And trust me, it's plenty of you.
Come on,
if
Dad.
You wait around, you hear them at the end. Yeah, Dad, come on. Did your dad listen to this show too?
No.
I didn't think so. But that's going to be a new long-running joke in Midweek Matinee, which is going to be a good time. So, community stake for this week. Don't have them all pulled together like we have been. I want to say we don't have as many responses as usual because I screwed up and realized very late last night that I hadn't posted it. So, for those of you who did the short-term thing, I appreciate it. But we have a number of answers specifically on Discord, so thank you guys. We have some on Facebook, and I think Twitter might have been devoid of any answers.
Yeah, Twitter had 0. Okay. But of course, Community's Take now is all going off of our topic from the show before, and we asked you guys, how do you feel about the state of game reviews? Should they change? Do you find them as useful as is? What do you look for in game reviews? And over there on our Discord, a buddy of ours who does sometimes have some good hot takes as well. Yeah, Rude Days 93. He says, well, I think there are a lot of bad game reviewers out there. I think with YouTube content creators now, it's pretty easy to find someone that has the same overall taste in a game you would like. And if you're looking for game reviews, that's the first thing you should be looking for is for reviewers with gaming tastes that line up to yours. I think there are many times a game reviewer gets treated unfairly because they don't enjoy a game as much as others. And people forget that these reviews are opinion pieces, and it doesn't mean that they're wrong if they don't like the game, unless, of course, their review is disingenuous by not having played it enough throwing in their political opinion or any type of opinion that has nothing to do with the gameplay or story, then he says, looks at Kotaku.
A good example.
Careful, Rude Days. You don't have to call out David Jaffe so hard.
Is that what he did?
Yeah, he said Metroid Dread was bad, and then also said he didn't beat the first stage.
Yeah, but
why am I not surprised with that, man?
I will say this, and I think that's why this is a really important thing in here. I think the big difference between two things is that it depends on, was he calling his thing a review?
Yes.
And if he was, then that's fair. But more importantly, I still think that if you want to say that this is my review of something and this is my thoughts on something and then do that, as long as he's clear, it doesn't mean that people aren't going to try and mock him for the fact that he didn't do this. But as long as he's clear to say, and I didn't watch it, so I will say that. But any reviewer, let's kind of take this big scale. One of the things that Rude Day says in here is that it's disingenuous by not having played it enough. I think so long as your review specifically works around that limitation and you spend time talking about the piece that you played and you make it clear that that's all you played and why you didn't feel the draw to play further, I think that can still actually be a useful, interesting review.
Yeah, of course.
But if you don't approach it that way and you do this very big scale of like, here's the problems with Metroid Dread or with this game, and then later it's revealed by somebody looking at your trophies or something like, oh, you only got, like, trophy wise, you got through what would take most people an hour and you didn't put that in your review, that's a huge issue. You know, and those are two very different things. I don't
know. I was more making a joke at Jaffe's expense, but yeah, he literally called it a review and was talking about how bad the game design is throughout the entire game, and then hadn't beat the first level.
And then something about the game being hard.
Yeah,
was that what it was?
Yeah, that was basically like the game was hard because of bad design, and then he had the audacity to make a video saying, "I won a game design award in the 90s." And I'm like, bro, that doesn't mean that you're all knowing. Would be someone telling me that I'm blatantly wrong about a Red Sox fact. Be like, well, I have them tattooed on my arm, so I'm right. You know, it's stupid.
Yeah. Well, and so, but looking at the idea of reviews, yeah, I think that there's a time and place for all reviews. And I actually really find it interesting when you do find a couple of reviewers, and there are some out there that will say, I played 2 hours of this game and I quit, and here's why. A good example, right? And I get some of Chris, like he's had games where he's been like, I'm going to push through and play it anyway. But I think there's just as much value in reviewing a movie, reviewing a game, or whatever, and being like, people can say you didn't watch the whole movie, your review is not fair. That's not true.
No,
as long as your
review is very valuable.
Yeah, a review of why you didn't finish something and that only covers what you did watch and why you didn't see the need to continue watching is fair for its own set of rules. It's all about how you choose to frame your review. If you choose to frame the review of the whole movie's bad, a good example makes me think of like Malignant, right? If you for some reason turn Malignant off in the first 40 minutes and you said it's bad for this reason, just because the movie maybe does something really cool in the long run and does this doesn't mean that first 40-minute review, as long as it's specified as such, is not a valid review. It is. Yeah. And for some people, they actually may look at that review and go, these reasons and looking at that give me all that I need to know that I don't want to have to waste 40 minutes at least to find out if I agree there and then see the good stuff. I think there's value in that.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
there's so little time to do things that a review that specifically says, this is where I stopped, be careful because you might stop here too, can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, plugging midweek again, when we did Up in the Air, I think that was a big thesis of our stuff where I think I was the one who said it, where I'm like, if you stop watching Up in the Air before the last 10 minutes, that's a romantic comedy. And if you finish it, it's a goddamn tragedy. So
yeah, it's a very big difference. And yeah, you're right, though. I mean, sometimes things can change on a dime. I would even argue that Malignant, going back to that completely, well, it almost doesn't have a genre leading up to its major point. But yeah, there's good examples of things that change, but it's interesting to see those opinions. So yeah, it's all about how genuine you are. If you're being genuine with your review in any state, I think you can review in any potential way. Because you're right, it is an opinion, right? And I think you look at all these different people that you can line up with. But I think there's also this idea of, even if you align with somebody, hopefully the reason you align with them is because you find them to be genuine people that also share your review, your taste in games. Right. For both of you, I'm curious, do y'all ever go and read a review after you've played a game without reading any reviews because you thought you were going to like the game. You play it, you beat it, then you go read a review just to see if other people land somewhere similar to you or if it's like vastly different.
I've done that with movies. I've never done it with a game.
I was gonna say I do that all the time with movies. What I'll do is I'll watch a movie and I'm like, that was pretty good. I'll open up Reddit, go to our movies, and I'll type in that movie, find the official discussion of people's takes of it as it came out, and just kind of reflect on like how I feel about it and how they feel about
versus popular opinion, or at least popular for that area.
Yeah,
doesn't mean anything. But yeah, I will find that I occasionally will just, even months down the line, sometimes I'll see somebody and I'll be like, I find them interesting, and I've liked some of their stuff in the past, and they're talking about this game. I'm gonna click through and watch it and read it, and it's very interesting. And that depends. I find that I actually lean on reviews more in that way, or experience reviews more in that way than anything, as like a post look at someone else's examination of the same thing I experienced and how we experienced it, or how we felt about that experience.
Yeah, I tend to use reviews for games as like a set expectation setter. You know, because I've said, I think on this show before, it's like I have enough money where if I don't like a game, I can just drop it, you know? So I'm not, you know, Guardians people are mixed on it. I'm like, I like Marvel and I like the Guardians, so I'm pre-ordering it. But I'll watch SkillUp's review and I'll watch ACG's review and I'll go, okay, well, they didn't love the game, so at least I know like I'm not going into a perfect experience. I don't tend to make my purchase decisions off it anymore. But I remember when I was a kid, I used to wait until midnight for the Call of Duty reviews and then walk to GameStop and join the line, you know, if it got good reviews. So like
I've never done that. If I'm if I'm going to go to a midnight, it's because I already know where I stand on the game through gameplay videos or whatever, you know? The
GameStop I used to have near me was literally like 5 minutes down the road walking.
Walk down.
Yeah.
I think game reviews can be helpful to get people to buy things that they're unsure of, right? Because sometimes it depends on how a game was shown. I feel like sometimes games get enough pieces to where you can watch gameplay and experience these weird things and get a trailer that gives you an idea of story, and you can piece together how much you think that it lines up with the interest for you. But sometimes there are games that are kind of an enigma and you kind of just wonder, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and watch it. Like a good example is I already was going to buy it. I wasn't worried about that at all. I'd already pre-ordered it. So that factor was out of it. But there was still that thing of like kind of you were talking about the expectation set where I watched ACG's Kena review before I ever got around to playing Kena, you know? And it did help set an expectation that I do feel like actually made me enjoy the game more because I had a slightly better idea of what I was getting into by hearing someone talk a little more in depth about it than what preview events showed.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a good one, Rude Days. Thanks, man. This one's interesting. We have Rude Cold, one of our patrons as well. He says, as I write game reviews, I'm going to, of course, say they are relevant, but you have to find a reviewer that you trust their opinion and that they have seen the game through to its end or at least state what they've played in their review. It's always best to read a few reviews, even those that give low scores, as they may state something that is off-putting about a game, which would give you cause for concern about the game. Generally try not to follow hype and read the actual reviews rather than just rely on a score. Which scoring is a really interesting thing when it comes to that. And it actually kind of comes around to something that Joshua Lago said. So I want to tie these together before we talk about it. Over on Facebook, he says a lot of emphasis gets placed. Also, he's another one of our patrons. Thanks, Josh. He says a lot of emphasis gets placed on having a definitive take right away. And of course, we get why. But I think that the most insightful reviews of any kind usually require time to marinate. I don't know what I'd change, though, other than to generally do away with scores and instead focus on what's good about the game and who it's for, which some reviewers already do. So those two things together, I do think is important. And I like that Rude Cold answered because of the fact that he does write reviews. And it's interesting to get the mindset of someone who spends time doing that. But how do you guys feel about scores? Like there's this world of review, right? Where people look at reviews as just this number. And that's why we've complained, I think Saul and I in the past, about the way that Metacritic works, that some people use Metacritic as a means to skip the review reading process, go to a site, and then just go, well, this game has a bad conglomerate score. And that means that the game is bad. Well, if you read a review, even with the score, you can sometimes find that, the score is maybe a 7 out of 10, but I find these 3 things interesting enough for me to give that 7 out of 10 a go, because it could still be a good 7 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 or whatever it be. So do you guys like the scores, or do you find that yourselves automatically go down and like immediately look at the score, or do you read the review first?
Unless I'm looking for controversy, I don't care about scores. If I know something's being controversial, I'm gonna look for the score. Why did the new Zelda game get a 1 on IGN? I got to figure this out.
Oh yeah. One of those times where a long running series gets a very odd sudden turn.
I got to go figure it out or see it for myself.
Yeah, I think going back to the order, I think that was part of what kind of made the order interesting and made the news thrive more, because it was like some review sites were giving it like 60s to 70s, and some were giving it like a 1 out of 10, and people were like, whoa, what's this 1 out of 10?
Don't forget,
I'm gonna go click on it.
The one guy that got it early that came out and was like, you can fully beat this game in 8 hours, and that's watching the cutscenes pretty much shut everything down. That one guy ruined it for tons and tons of people.
Well, do you remember speaking of that one in particular, that was one of the games where someone had posted a thing that said you could beat the game in 5 hours, and then that got caught up in this idea of hyperbole of you could beat the game in 4 hours.
Well,
which is just not true.
No, it's the opposite of that. It was the guy that posted it. He's like, he clocked in his time, and it was 8 hours, all cutscenes watched, and then they exaggerated that.
Yeah, well, there was one where they posted a gameplay, and I never even watched the video because I, of course, didn't want to get spoiled. But it was 5.5 hours, and then
I don't know about that one.
That was when people started doing the hyperbole of it's 4 hours, which kind of leads to that thing of if a review hones in on one thing, right? Have you ever seen reviews where like a game gets controversial before it comes, and then it feels like the whole review is about that? It's funny because Rude Day says looks at Kotaku. I've actually seen reviews from Kotaku where the entire review is about one thing, and it feels so disconnected from the game at large that it's like, why did you spend an entire review talking about this?
How am I supposed to review the PS5 in a pandemic?
Do you remember what review was it where? Oh man, I'm really trying to think where someone was like, they gave points off to the game for being a PS5 exclusive because it's so hard to get a PS5. I swear
that
to you.
That was a Demon Souls review.
I swear to you, it was a Kotaku review.
It wasn't a Kotaku review, but it was certainly Demon Souls. And it was, I'm not going to say who I think it was because I think I'm wrong. But
I just remember that was talked about. They were like, this game is great, but could have been better if more people could have played it. Well, the PS5 continues to be so hard to get that Sony made a wrong move here by putting the game only on
the
PS5.
Quality of this game, it transcends anything that I've seen before, and I think it's a shame that it's only on PlayStation 5 because that truly limits the amount of people who could actually play it. Pretty much what it was.
If one person can play a game, that doesn't mean it's not a 10. That's so stupid.
It was Kotaku that did the thing about the basically the entire PS5 review was just a look at how income inequality and all these different things play into the factors that people can't buy PlayStation 5s. It was odd. It was I remember reading it because I was like, I want to see what the PS5 is about. Like, I want to know what the system does, what I can expect from it. Not that it's hard to get, because that's obvious already. Reviews can be a very interesting thing. Actually, you know what we didn't talk about here is that game reviews, but tech reviews of things that go into gaming are just as interesting sometimes. Hey, you know what? We talked about Shave Dog a little this week, so we're gonna throw in Shave Dogs here. He says, no hot take this week, but I've never liked the way most places do reviews. They either partially play a game and put out a score, or someone that can't stand a series genre puts out a jaded score, or my current favorite, someone that has motion sickness issues reviewing a VR game. Shaking my head. I always thought a place like IGN or GameSpot, etc., should have 3 people reviewing the same title, and the score would be the average of the 3. Reviews should stop the embargo crap as well. Every gamer is pretty well informed at this point. Reviews also shouldn't be completed before day 1 patches. Days Gone is a perfect example of that. Of course, if games weren't launched before being completed, that would be a non-issue. There's a lot to unpack there. One of the interesting things I really want to own in on here, because I think it could be good, but it's unreal from a manpower standpoint, is the idea that very large publications like IGN and GameSpot should try to have multiple reviewers review the game and then have their total score be a conglomerate or an average of the 3. How do you guys feel about that, Chris? What are you thinking?
I think it's a perfect world thing, but we don't live in a perfect world, so it's never going to happen. And I don't really think it's necessary. I think one thing nobody has really captured, including us, is that there's also a responsibility on gamers, which I guess I'll give credit to Rude Cold, he kind of got there, where there's a responsibility on the gamer to understand IGN doesn't mean IGN as a whole. It means Justin Dornbush of IGN likes whatever game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a problem too in reviews is you'll see it all the time when people are like kind of dunking on Kotaku, where it's like this article from 2016 by a completely different author says one thing, and then this article in 2020 by a completely different author says another thing, and they contradict. And it's like, yeah, that's really funny to get your 100,000 likes on Twitter or whatever, but that doesn't actually have anything to do with the artist. If it has something to do with the publication, maybe the publication could look internally at themselves and realize, oh, we've published hypocritical articles, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think what everyone is asking for in game reviews and in media is, I want to see from both sides. And then sometimes we'll see from both sides and it's like, you said that women suck in 2016, and then in 2020 you said women were great. You're hypocritical. And it's like, no, A, they're two different opinions, and B, people can change and grow. So I think
that's the other part. Yeah. I think that's, even then, right? Like, let's take that viewpoint and that idea and shrink it down. Even if, and I would actually appreciate this too, even if Kotaku, IGN, anybody put out dual opinions within the same week, right? One article that says this and then one article that says this, but they're from two different people. That's a good thing. And like you mentioned, I don't think a site should look in and say, oh, we need to not have hypocritical differing views, because that means that publication is trying to funnel down to have a single vision and is afraid to have their writers, who might be talented, explain different positions from a different standpoint and write that out in a well way. I think it comes down to, if you're a good writer and you know how to articulate your position, then there's no reason that you shouldn't allow two completely differing standpoints to be published to your thing. You know, from the business side of it, the only thing that comes down to, is it worth having two articles about the same thing? And maybe sometimes it's not, even if they're differing viewpoints. So that's pretty interesting. What do you think? And I agree, but this is also a problem across the industry. The idea that reviews shouldn't be completed before day one patches. The problem with that is, it's true that Days Gone is an example. And of course, if games were completed, that's really what it comes down to. Day one patches they're not necessary, but in the way that we currently do the game industry, it's a necessary evil, right?
Yes, and I don't know. It's weird because I think if we do this, then you're gonna start hearing a lot of like, well, why don't I have a review on day one? You know, you can't have both. I think it's just a matter of acknowledging that you've done the review before a day one patch or whatever, you know. And I have the context of what they're planning on fixing in the day one patch, but I also think game reviews don't ever update and be like, hey, the day one patch is out. This is fixed. That is fixed. Or they didn't fix this and they told us we would, you know.
Yeah, and that would be valuable, but it comes back to the idea of you're having to get somebody to move back to something they've already moved on from in order to play it more, just to change a little bit of their review and add an addendum. Perfect world situation, like you mentioned earlier. I would love that. How realistic and feasible is it within the current setup of the gaming industry and reviews? I don't know. What do you think?
Something you could do just better is just launch review. Just title it differently.
Yeah.
You know, Elden Ring launch review, and then 6 months later, Elden Ring updated review. Two separate reviews entirely. And I think that there, especially a year down the road when it's on sale, being able to go back and find there's this guy who wrote this review, and then the same guy wrote the review 6 months later about what it is like going back to play it again. In the instance that he goes back and plays again. And if he doesn't, the launch review still stands as valuable information because it shows you what that review is like for those buying it then.
Yeah.
At launch.
I think a part of what goes on here that we've not really talked about yet is the idea of why day one reviews are important. Day one reviews are honestly less for the benefit of the consumer and more for the benefit of the publisher who wants to try and get a game out with good reviews as quickly as possible so that more people buy the game up front. Have you ever talked about or seen people talk about the idea of like the sales tail of a game, of like day one, you see a big explosion and then it kind of comes down. And then depending on what continued coverage looks like for it, you kind of see it bloat back out. And then eventually, before so long, it comes down to this very small tail that just sees little blips here and there when the game hits sales or something like that. Now, there are games that defy that. Grand Theft Auto 5 being one, Minecraft being one, games like Stardew Valley being one. There are definitely games that defy that. But the average game sees, for a long time at least, saw this idea of within the first 3 months, you're going to have a blowout. And then by the end of the 3-month period, you're coming to a tail. And so with that idea in mind, you have this thing of, what is the value of a 6 months later review to the publisher at that point for that business model? But most business models right now are trying to be this idea, kind of going back to Chris's thing about whether or not Suicide Squad is a live action game or a live service game. The weird thing about live service games is that their whole idea is to keep a consistent, instead of a tail, you want to have that explosion, but then you don't want it to tail. You want it to literally just be a consistent wave of up and down that never completely flattens, right?
Right.
And at that point, 6 months out review might be very valuable, because I think if you looked at a review right now of a good example would be something like Tom Clancy's, what's it called? Rainbow Six Siege. A review, and of course, people may be like, why would someone need a review of Rainbow Six when the game's been out forever? Well, because the game is in a completely different state now.
Yeah.
A review for No Man's Sky now looks way different than day one review for No Man's Sky, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So to that, it feels like there's a lot of value in that particular side of things.
But I also am curious of the ratio of people who are up to date with technology enough to know to go read game reviews, but at the same time, they're not up to date with the game itself. Like, I can't imagine like a parent. People say like naming conventions can be confusing for parents, but I don't think reviews would be. Like, I don't think that not a parent's like I go read a review for a game to judge for their child, right?
Or that's a good question. I doubt it.
Yeah. So like, I think that if you're going into like, if you're somebody like right now, even the most casual of people know that No Man's Sky had a rocky launch. Now, the person who plays one video game a year does not know, right? Or may not know. But he probably, like, if he's going to buy the game, say at GameStop, somebody's going to probably tell him like, oh, this game's good now, right? And if they don't, then even then, if they go back and read, like, type in No Man's Sky review, even the way that they searched, it's hilarious, is you're not going to get the IGN review from launch. So like right now, if I type in No Man's Sky review, which is the most common thing somebody's going to do is type into Google, it's going to show, actually it is going to show you 7.8 on IGN, which they were smoking some crack when they rated that game, if that's the launch score.
Well, I think the weird thing is No Man's Sky, I think, is one of the few games that I do remember seeing some publications doing a whatever year review update, you know. But
see, like, even then you have, is No Man's Sky worth buying in 2021? Is No Man's Sky any good? Did No Man's Sky flop? I played No Man's Sky 5 years later. Congratulations with that title, GameSpot. But yeah, I'm sure that the way, like, and I don't search for reviews anymore. The only reviews I happen to read are people that I'm already subscribed to, like SkillUp or ACG.
Yeah.
So it's very rare for me to think like, oh, I need to go look at a review for this game. I know publishers, I know developers, and I know that their development style and how they typically work. And unless something happens to come across to me on Reddit or like on Twitter of a game having something terribly wrong with it, then it's safe to say like there's probably not. It's probably a preference thing at that point on if I would like the game or not.
Sure. Well, yeah, I can
at least
see that.
in most cases.
Yeah, I want to do one more. It's the last one we have, and it comes from another patron. Thank you guys, all of you. He says it's Danny Candyman Villalobos over on Facebook. He says, I rarely, if at all, look up reviews for games that just came out. If I'm interested in a game that's coming out, I would be watching trailers and gameplay to see if I'm going to buy it. When I do watch reviews, I usually see if people I follow reviewed it or check out a few reviews with a high view count. I guess I wouldn't really change anything about how day one reviews go, because the point of those reviews are to tell people what they think of the game at the moment. Those reviews, I'd say, are mainly for people who are on the fence of buying it now full price or holding out for when it goes on sale. I want to circle back around with that idea too, to something Saul actually hinted at earlier and said, which is this idea of a down the road review. And you mentioned 6 months out because the game's on sale.
Right.
Well, one thing that I've actually seen one publication do, and I wouldn't be surprised if more do it. Push Square will do this thing when a game hits PS Plus, they'll repost a review, and they'll normally add an addendum of how they feel about it further out. It's like, hey, here's a game in case you didn't get the in case you didn't read reviews back then when it first came out, but you're interested in it now because it's free. Here's our review of it, and here's a slight change based off how we feel about it because of some new piece of information that's changed from day one. So that kind of goes back to the idea of Saul, of this of naming reviews and looking to where you can filter what kind of reviews you're looking for. Probably has a lot of value when you can say, hey, here's my day one. Saul, that looked very odd.
It did.
You were stimulating your computer.
Yeah, my mouse.
I think I just saw your laptop squirt. I just wish there was a camera back here for you to see what Saul was just doing.
Yeah, my mouse pad. I'm sitting there scrolling through Discord, catching up for the weekend that I haven't been able to read, and it's just my mouse pad just stopped working. I'm just sitting here.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Anyways,
so yeah. I like that though. I like the idea of being able to come back to games, and I think that actually kind of helps certain casual gamers, right, who aren't necessarily looking for a day one purchase, and they're really looking for more of an opinion that's after the case. Definitely when reviews hit so hard and fast these days, where you have not only a day one review, but oftentimes anywhere from 3 to 5 patches within the first 2 weeks of a game.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of value of looking. It comes back to perfect world, like Chris was talking about. And I know that there still would be a need for a day one review, but it would almost be awesome if people across the board could just say, we're going to wait for 2 weeks after release to release our full review so we can kind of get an idea with all those things and play the game as any other person would. Which kind of, remember when Bethesda got backlash for not offering reviews? They wouldn't send review codes to people until day of release.
Yep. And those games, even back when I didn't buy games at launch, unless it's from developers I really like, those games get blacklisted by me. Like you're not getting my money for a while.
Well, it's funny because that's based off the expectation. And I'm not saying you're wrong to have that, but for me, I never cared. I thought, okay, so you're forcing reviewers to play the game as anyone else would play it. And that kind of goes towards what Shafe Dog was saying, where in that situation, reviewers are being forced to play the game with day one patch and with everyone else and kind of have a conversation around the game that way. And there might be value in that it keeps it keeps developers from having to worry about having a stable enough semi-review version to push out to people.
Or on the other side of the coin, they didn't have a stable enough version to give reviewers 2 weeks prior to launch.
It's possible.
So
it is possible.
They did not want bad review scores, which is more times off than not, I think, the case.
Which leads us back to the interesting case of Cyberpunk, a game that actually I think got what Chris was talking about to a degree, where Cyberpunk's reviews were way better than I would have anticipated because of the fact that all reviewers did exactly what Chris did. They looked at the good and tried their best to ignore the bad. So they were like, it'll be fixed one day. And there's that value that Chris was talking about of being able to come back to a game and be like, this is what the day one patch was supposed to fix. And this is what it didn't fix. Because if you look at reviews for Cyberpunk, that game was terrible. People were talking about not seeing entire character models at the very end of the game and all sorts of crap. And that game still got day one reviews. I know it didn't hit the numbers everyone wanted, but what was Cyberpunk's day one review score? Day one Metacritic.
You're going to have a hard time finding that, I think.
I think you're right.
Unless you find a screenshot. Because that kind of stuff.
But it goes to show that a game like this still had this situation where it reviewed fairly well. Like, I'm going to go look at IGN, right? IGN Cyberpunk review and see if it's been updated. Because I think...
Well, here's an article from Gamer Rant on...
Dude, look, IGN gave it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah. So, back in December 11th of 2020, it was 1.9 on PS4.
For a user score.
That says aggregated score. So I don't know if they're counting Metascore and no, that is user score.
Yeah,
because Metascore was not out yet. So that's probably
3.5, 5.4, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's probably Mixed 6.1 compared to the 90 Metacritic average.
So
that's probably just a troll
this is really interesting. So this is a good look right here, right? IGN, the original reviewer, Tom Marks, for the original December 7th, 2020 release, came back, and it actually shows right here that this review was updated on September 26th, 2021. And I'm curious to see if that's when this got a 9 out of 10. Because I do remember it getting decent review scores, but I don't think it was that well even day one, because they still said there's bugs, right? Interesting. I'm very curious as to what it was once, because it still just shows a 9. It doesn't show what the original score was. And as we've already said, going just to the score is not the way to do this. But for the sake of looking at the final outcome so that we can get the conversation moving in a specific way, it's interesting. And it's also interesting to see that it's been updated.
Speaking of Cyberpunk, there's an interesting user review I just saw. It's a 10 out of 10, and it says, "Love it. Thanks for many emotions and awesome time. Many bugs and crashes, but size and perspectives of this project, stunning." So it seems like people who got it, who liked it, just didn't care about the crashes. I really didn't care. I thought it was funny, and I wanted to track it, but I didn't care. I was having fun the whole time.
There were times where it frustrated me, but for the most part, it was like, I just don't want it to crash or have to redo something.
Because that was one thing that the game seemed really good at, like knowing it was about to crash. And like I was getting good at being able to be like, okay, it's about to crash, huh? Yep. There it goes. And it felt like the game would, because I think I told you, I don't think I lost any progress off any of those crashes.
One time I lost about 20 minutes of gameplay, and that was the worst I'd experienced.
Yeah.
Almost every time before, it literally saved right before it crashed. Almost like the system was like, a crash is coming, autosave.
Yep.
So it was a very interesting situation for that. But I think to answer the long running question, there's tons of value in reviews still, but there's also tons of room for the idea of a review to change and the processes behind them to get streamlined in a way that's better, not only for publishers, not only for players, because that's what it comes down to. Is they want it to be best for everybody involved. And the publishers are a big push behind that, because without the publishers sending free codes out, we wouldn't get near as many reviews as we do.
Yep.
And that's just the fact behind it. And publishers might not feel the want to send out review codes if they think that everyone's going to unfairly judge them. But I also think that that's being a little too shallow with looking at the way executives can be. Yeah, there are executives that are like that, but I think some actually care. It's just, where do you sniff them out and find them at? So with that, the one thing that we've not gotten into yet, and I think it's how we're going to round this episode out, is a very interesting Reddit exchange that Saul had.
I'm an official leaker, or I'm an official source to be.
Were you a leaky? You were leaked too?
Elite too. So for reference, nobody knows. Like, my Reddit account is like, it's not anonymous on purpose, but it's not like it's an account name that I've ever had. But I was in the gaming leaks and rumors subreddit, and I generally go in there and like chit chat with people about things. And one person just randomly messaged me out of the blue, and we were talking specifically about Jak and Daxter, more specifically about the PSP game Daxter. And he was asking me for my opinions for things and stuff like that about like what we were sitting there watching. And I was like, kind of like done with the conversation. And he was like, I forgot how he phrased it, but he said, you know, with some of the insider knowledge I have that I posted on that Reddit before, here's some stuff. And then this was all happening pretty much while I was sleeping, except for one of them. One of them happened. The first one happened right before I went to bed, and he gave me a leak, quote unquote, something. It's not a leak. It's fake. All of this is probably fake. And then I was like, that's interesting. And then like 4 or 5 more while I was asleep that I woke up to. But I'll read them off to you guys because of how crazy they are. And this is merely for fun. But it's also merely to put it out there in the world because it'd be interesting if this was actually true. The first one he sends me that says, it just says they, I guess Microsoft, but it says they will be debuting gameplay for Starfield come June with what would be E3 2022. It won't be much, but it will be at the very minimum the cockpit video that's been circulating around with some flying and some on-foot exploration. The trailer is less than 3 minutes total. So that's kind of vague. Like that's very that's a safe leak. That's like something anybody could put out there and be 50-50 right on.
I would argue that's less of a leak and more of a no shit. At E3, they're going to debut gameplay of their biggest game of next year. No way.
So this is this is not in the order I got them from because I just copied and pasted them. But this is certainly, and I've cleaned them up. This is certainly though. This is how it's going to lead into. So the next thing they said was they will be making another studio acquisition by the end of April. Which is kind of vague again. Like that could be anything. By the end of April could also mean like from now to the end of April, right? Like I could read it that way.
Yeah.
So
it's by the end of April.
Yeah, by the end of April.
Yeah, but this one could be anytime up to that point.
This is the big one. This one is Elder Scrolls 6 Deathland. Yes, this is a real title and not the working title. This takes place roughly around the 4th era, and the main campaign has to do with the Great War. I'm not a massive Elder Scrolls fan, but the person who gave me this info said it's about the size of Skyrim in terms of scope, but the map is about 50% bigger. Something else Bethesda's working on towards is heavily populated areas. That's all I know. So that's interesting.
Trying to give us those Assassin's Creed Unity crowds.
That's a flat out like here's a name to go with this series. And here's where it is, and here's the size of the map.
I think he kind of got Saul on that one too, because Saul started like Googling. And
I googled Deathland. That's a real thing it's a real thing involving Hammerfell,
and it's a real thing that happens during the same time the guy said in the lore, which
the Great War that happens
is accessible to everyone. To be fair,
so those are those lore people who are really into Elder Scrolls lore. Fact check what I just said to make sure that's correct. But from what I read, it seems to be. Mm-hmm. Then he says. Bloodborne Remake is being done by Bluepoint and will be launching in March of 2023, which is bold. We get this announcement towards the end of the year 2022. Also, I almost called him Corey. Chris, I never said Bluepoint wasn't remaking Bloodborne. It's the sequel I disagree with. I want them to remake Bloodborne.
I'm still right.
We get this announcement towards the end of the year 2022. There is no word on if it's on PC or not currently. So I guess what I can read that is like the anybody leaking that it's on PC is like that's not part of the same as this, I guess. But in terms of Bluepoint is working on a brand new Jak and Daxter game set to release. Here's the release date. Here's what's really gonna get you. Here's what's really gonna get you. Hold on, Chris. It ain't done. Set to release in winter of 2022. So next winter. The game has been, this ain't done yet either. This game has been in production alongside the Bloodborne remake since halfway through production of Demon Souls. That studio is not that big.
No, that studio is not
to
that
be
big.
Working on 2 games while finishing up a third.
And what's interesting about that is if you actually look into the production of Demon Souls, they even at being between 70 to 90 employees the entire time of that, so much work from that game, and I don't mean in a bad way, was outsourced in the way that Sony always does. Some of the audio design was outsourced, some, not all. Some of the most of the art was done in-house. Small little things, I don't say small little things, but they did a lot of outsourcing, and that's for that title at 70 to 90 people.
Yeah,
even if they've grown. Doing 2 games,
Bloodborne,
a remake,
or it's not arguably, it's bigger than Demon Souls.
A remake of Bloodborne to the quality of Demon Souls, along with a brand new Jak and Daxter. It just, and don't get me wrong, like I said, this is just interesting. I don't know how much of this I believe. Honestly, I'm going to say I don't believe any of it.
But it's one of those things that I'm keeping in my phone. The reason I copy and pasted them on my phone is for this exact reason. I actually put them in here as bullet points, so I can check them off if they're ever right. But the last part of that rumor was there's also a rumor that people from Naughty Dog have unofficially helped with this. I don't know what that means. Unofficially helped with this.
That sounds
like off the record.
If anything, Sony, if that was happening, and Naughty Dog wanted to be part of it, that would be official. How would you unofficially help? Hey guys, we're off the clock. I just wanted you to know. We were thinking that Daxter this time around could be get turned into a pterodactyl.
And then here comes I missed one. PlayStation was also working on a handheld device up in 2018.
Oh yeah, until 2018.
This was in the early planning stages and was almost put into engineering production until they decided completely against it. Word around the office was that they did not want to compete with the Switch yet. So that's interesting because that's framing it as, to me at least, that's framing it that there's going to be another one.
But they're still looking at the potential for a handheld to compete with Switch at some point in time.
Yeah. Once again, interesting about the 2018 timeframe in my eye. Now that I've thought about that, but then this is where this guy loses all credibility. The fact that he went from Bethesda or Microsoft to PlayStation. Here now he went to Nintendo. Metroid. Now this is another thing. Metroid Prime 3, not 4, but 3 is heading to Switch in January of 2023. That's
not one. That's a not
full
two,
year and a half
only
away
3
for a remake of a GameCube game or a remaster. It doesn't even say remaster or remake. This one's kind of crazy. Within the next 3 title dumps for the classic console, we'll be getting both Jet Force Gemini and Conker's Bad Fur Day as a collaboration between Nintendo and Rare. Banjo-Kazooie is also teased during this ordeal. At the end of a trailer, an Xbox logo shows. I don't even know what that's supposed to imply with the Xbox logo. Does that mean that Nintendo and Xbox are working together, or does that mean that
technically it would have to because for certain things because
for Rare
is owned by Microsoft?
I don't know. I don't know what it implies in this. Does that mean that these games are also coming to Xbox, or does it mean something more? I don't know what that last part meant. There are no plans for a GBA classic games on Switch at the moment. That's a hard-hitting one for me. The next Pokemon game will be announced in April of 2022. That's I don't know. In April. He doesn't say before.
The next Pokemon game.
Yeah, will be announced this coming April.
That's pretty broad. There's a lot of Pokemon games. That's the chances of that being on the dollar because it's so that vague is pretty high.
Yeah. GameCube Mini will be announced in May with a July release date. No titles have been discussed yet.
Hold on, they just completely skipped Nintendo 64 Mini?
I'm assuming. Here's what I'm assuming, because I pick apart this the same way y'all are. The guy wanted to play it safe, and because they're doing Nintendo 64 online, they're not going to do a mini. So they're going to go to the next console. But the May to July thing is also bold, because he's outright predicting there's going to be a Direct in May in which this is announced. This is fully announced in July. And then the last one is a new 3D Mario game will be announced February 2022.
So some of these are just so like vague, and they're vague enough to get you like, okay, it could happen. It doesn't mean you're right.
That's the thing is I think like half of these will probably be right because they're so obvious. And then he does something like Jak and Daxter. Shut up.
Which is funny because I think that's why he talking to me to begin with, is because everybody was talking about Daxter in this comment thread. But I'm also curious, like, I'm not going to do it, but I want to go back to that comment thread and message the other people and be like, did y'all get like a person in y'all's DMs like leaking about a Jak and Daxter game? So,
the thing is that these types of things can be fun, but there's always this idea of like, here's the thing. Clearly, he doesn't expect to get clout out of this because he deleted his account.
His Red account's gone.
Yeah, he can't. And that actually adds a really interesting layer to this. Not that I'm saying any of this is true, but we've dealt with people before, personally, Saul and I, who have been the people to leak things.
We've lost, and we've quit partnerships over it.
They always end up doing this thing where they keep their account around and they try their best to delete things after it turns out not to be true, and to try to keep the things that might end up being true, so they get this weird leaker clout where they get one thing right and people start being like, they've been a proven leaker before. You know what I mean?
But they forget they posted our Discord, and that's the one place they forget to delete everything.
But those types of things
they absolutely did.
Right, is that those can be really fun, but it does start to make you wonder, what was his intentions? Was his intentions just purely troll based, or is there some chance that he's literally just regurgitating what someone else has told him, and he's just having fun with it? Like, someone came to him and was like, "Don't tell anybody, but this, and this," and he was just like, "You know what? I'm going to go tell him anyway. I'm going to make a brand new account, go to this place, and just start chatting up with people."
Well, see, and that's
sending
the thing.
It out there.
That's the thing. I didn't think anything of it, but if I knew he was going to delete his account overnight after an email or DMing me or whatever, I would have checked to see how old his account was, because his account could have been like 6 years old on Reddit, and like that could have been a purchase account. To be fair, people do that all the time.
Like, give you money for your Reddit account?
Absolutely do. And like people do that for karma too. Like if you have millions of karma, they will 100% buy your account, so like they can then advertise on it. like subtly. Like they'll go into like male fashion and be like, they're like, what's everybody's favorite stuff? And they're like, well, mine's this J. Crew shirt right here. Here's a link. And it's like, it's very subtle advertising.
That's wild.
Yep.
Well, here's the thing. I think I have the perfect community's take here because I just love it.
Yeah.
I want the community's take to be that I want all of our listeners who want to participate to give me their best fake
Oh, I like
pitch.
it.
I want them to work up their perfect fake leak, not a real one, clearly, but like work up what you would tell somebody if you were in a position where you could just have fun with them and tell them something that they might believe. Just what's your crazy leak, and just have fun with it. It could be literally anything. I don't care. I just think that this is super fun.
I got it. I got mine for next week.
Okay. Chris, of course, you're more than welcome to have your own. I think all of us should try and come with our own stupid leak that we want to come with.
But you have to make it sound as believable as possible.
But look, I'm going to... Chris, you laughed so voraciously at Jak and Daxter that I am actually a little curious here. Do you, because of that, think that Sony is 100% done with Jak and Daxter?
Yes.
You don't think it's coming back?
I think... Here's my thing. I think if Naughty Dog took back a remake of one of their games, they're not going to let someone else make a new entry in one of their games
at this point. Yeah, because of course someone could look back and say, well, they made Jak and Daxter The Lost Frontier, or Naughty Dog allowed somebody to use their IP to make that. But that's been a long time ago, But at the same time, I will say this. They clearly have interest to do more with The Last of Us, hence the fact that they're doing a show and continuing to make some kind of multiplayer game within The Last of Us. So having a tighter grip over that, and considering that they are the people who are studio heads there now and whatnot are the ones who directed that and made that, I think it's a little different. Jak and Daxter is weird because the current form of Naughty Dog doesn't really have much creative push, or not even push, creative fondness or whatever, or at least it would be less, right? It's not their baby. Some people who made Jak and Daxter may still be with the company, but for the most part, that's a very different company than made Crash and made Jak. Those are both the original founders, and neither of them are there and haven't been for a long time now. They left right around Uncharted 1, I think.
Yeah.
So when you think about it that way, I could actually see them being like, yeah, it may be our IP, but we don't really have that kind of care for it. We don't want to give it the white glove treatment every single time. What's interesting is that they've talked about coming back to Jak and Daxter and have like made different art and pitches and whatnot. They always just go against it. So
I don't think there's any reason to bring back Jak and Daxter in 2021.
It's interesting because I know there's somebody who's like, there absolutely is, which it's not me. I don't mind Jak and Daxter. I think they're perfectly fine games. I don't care if there's a new one personally.
It would be cool to replay Daxter just because that's my favorite one.
Daxter's
Daxter and 3,
yeah.
but I don't think there should be a new one.
A new title.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, like just adding or, remastering Daxter for $20 on PS5.
Or just the whole thing for 3 like they did with the PSP. Just bring that to PS4 or 5.
Yeah. And then
hold on. It was on PS3 and PSP.
What's up, Chris?
Or PS Vita.
I guess I can't see a good reason why you would buy Bluepoint and have them do this instead of finding like a Sanzaru who can do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's funny because we were talking about that. While I don't care about a Jak and Daxter, I think by looking at the same era and the same breadth of character and whatnot, I really do want a new Sly Cooper. Because I think that there's plenty of stuff that you can do within that world and character set. And I think Sony clearly thinks so too, because they've talked about maybe doing a movie and stuff. I think that there's just like a risk thing where they're going there and being like, the last time we did put money to it, it just didn't sell well. And you have that kind of back and forth. And I think that that's true of Jak and Daxter too, right? Where The Lost Frontier did not sell well.
Yeah.
And so you have this thing where it's like, just don't do it. We'll just keep it, which there is value in that, right? It's better to let an IP rest with a good track record than to bring it back just for the sake of bringing it back. Because if you ever actually get somebody who you think really could do it justice, then you pull it out of the fire. You'd be like, all right, now we're going to pull it out because we think there's someone who has a real vision for it. Not just, hey, is there anybody out there that would like to make a new Jak and Daxter game just because?
I have an extra level though to community take.
What's up?
I want you to not only come up with a leak that sounds plausible, right? I invite somebody. Oh my gosh. I invite somebody to make a fake account and to leak us a game. We're a PlayStation podcast, right? So I invite anybody who wants to leak us something, right?
Are we starting an ARG?
We could, absolutely. But I want somebody who thinks they know something in the community or that knows somebody in the industry to leak us something and get the word out through us. And I'll invite us to be the leakers.
I know what I want to do with my life now.
Uh-oh.
All right, so
a cloud leaker.
Texarkana is a city that sees a lot of people travel through it as they try to make their way through different states. Like we're a hub. People don't really stop here for more than like getting gas and stuff like that,
kind of
eating and whatnot. We get a lot of that traffic. Around town and on travels that I do for work to smaller towns around, I want to start loading up design documents and stuff that are fake for games on flash drives and leaving them in random spots.
First of all, if you put a random flash drive in your computer, you're an idiot. Let alone,
look, I could get Ray to like etch the PlayStation logo onto the metal part of them so they look official, and then just leave a PlayStation.
Oh, you can get
flash drive,
little, like light blue, like silicone on the drives too to match the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a stupid idea. Anyways, you guys can answer the community's take over there on Twitter at Triangle SQRD, at the Discord in the link description below, at Patreon if you really want to, at patreon.com/Nartech. Which, speaking of, you could help us out and help support the show with any kind of little menial cost, from little mic stuff that we have to have every now and then, all the way up to a new camera if this thing broke. And of course, you could find us on Facebook at a group called Triangle Squared, a PlayStation Podcast. You can ask to join that, and you will be invited on in. So we invite everybody else for episode 235. Leak us some information, make it as believable as possible, and
or don't.
Yeah, or don't.
Care.
Yeah, or don't. Just make it as wild. But we'll see everybody back for episode 235. Thank you.
And before someone says that Sony's going to buy Microsoft. All right, guys. Thank you, guys. Chris, thanks too, man.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, guys. We will see y'all next time around. Thanks to our patrons. Hammond Egger, Bailey Robertson, Rob Warpoint, Josh Drago, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Kyle Grimm, Richard Schaefer, Rude Days 93, Joshua Lago, Landis, Zachary Sawyer, Kevin Baconbits, Luke Rabbit, Danny Villalobos, Solitary Red, Jehudi MD, Sean, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Corey Hickerson, Constantly Kenny, Matthew Green, Sean Santarude, The Stonard, Josh Jarrell, Steven Salazar, Shadowist, and my name is Dan. Thank you all.